Hey guys, it's Christina. This is Voxandstix, and I am here with the first non-musical guest we have ever had on this show. I am so excited to have the maestro behind the sorrow. Say hi, Neil. Say hello to everybody.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing?
I'm sure they're in the chat going, "We're good, Neil. How are you?" So I'll have to we'll have to get that answer in a while when this actually airs. But I am so happy to have you here. I have been waiting and waiting and waiting to have you on this show, and unfortunately, we don't get to have the lovely Brent with us because he's not feeling well. But
Yeah,
I'm sure you will talk about him plenty, and it'll be like he's here. You should get like a little Brent picture on a stick and just hold it up. And then I could be like, Brent, so tell me about your part in that. No, I could probably not. So yeah, but okay, listen, we have a shit ton to talk about because we've got a whole series we've got to deconstruct and explore for everybody, but I have to do my diligence here and begin, as I always do, with a really important question, Neil. Okay. And I want you to, really think about this because it's important, and I want your honest answer. So don't filter. Don't be afraid. We'll get through it together. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. I need to know, Neil, how do you feel about the word moist?
Oh my gosh, I have my own story to that. So
do it. Tell me your moist story, so to speak.
One of my former coworkers in Texas, when I was working in a nursing home in Bowie, Texas, she was the social worker, and we would we would torture her with that word.
Oh no.
We would walk by her office and go moist, and just keep walking.
She really hated it.
And then we'd come into like a conversation, and then suddenly we just drop that word, and and she would be like so embarrassed, and yeah. So I personally don't have an issue with the word moist, but a lot of people do.
So you might get toenail fungus on account of it's so moist in there.
That'll be the last time I hear that word coming out of your mouth.
They really do. Okay, so you prefer to weaponize moist, but you're not personally aghast with the word. Okay. Because some people, man, really. So, like, would she just? Was it like a prim and proper thing with her, or it was just like a sensory thing where she hated the word? Like, what was the?
Yeah, she hated the word, and she was, more prim and proper than I am.
I mean, I don't know how high that bar is, Neil, because you look like a pretty cool dude. But okay, so I wonder how many people would be cool with the word moist had I asked them. But I asked the right person. You're not anti-moistness, which is
no
good in a lot of contexts. So which we're not going to plumb right now. But okay, so guys, Neil, for those who don't know, and I know a lot of people already know all about you, Neil, because you are making a lot of work for the indie music community with what you're doing, which is, one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you here. But Neil has a teeny tiny whisper brief project called The Sorrow. And this is we're going to talk, so like I want to get really into it, but why don't you begin by explaining to everybody just a little bit about, like, if you had to encapsulate a description, like your IMDb bio or whatever, you've got that. Tell everybody what you're doing here, and then we'll build out from there.
Okay, it's a series about an ordinary guy named Brian, who is a male nurse. He's an RN, and all of a sudden it's like he's just living his normal life. He's got a relationship, he's got a fiance, and everything's going good. He's got a nice career at this facility, and then all of a sudden it's like the shit hits the fan, and he's like catapulted into this fucked up nightmare. He has no idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't understand why this is happening to him, and it just keeps unraveling until you figure out that there's something more sinister behind the already sinister portion. It's like,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
yeah.
That was a very good encapsulation. I like it because you left just enough, but you didn't blow anything too much before we get to talk about it. So I think you know, just to give people like broader context. So this is a web series. You know, it's YouTube.
Yep.
Is it elsewhere? I only watched it on YouTube, but is it?
No,
Do you
it's
have
only
it?
on YouTube.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's enough. As long as
Yeah.
it's watchable, we're happy. So this is fascinating to me because, from what I understand, you started this as a movie. This was supposed to be like a
Yeah.
short film, right? And then
Yeah.
I guess you realized that you had too much to say
Yeah.
for a movie.
We tried doing the movie and it went, you know, past 2 hours, and I was like, oh no, you know, and I was splicing stuff and I was totally, you know, getting rid of good stuff. So I was like, no,
Yeah.
let's turn this into a series.
Smart.
And yeah, and that's how it kind of just kept going, and I was having fun with it. And you know, it all came about because, you know, COVID hit, and I was just like, you know, this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
Let's do it now.
Yeah, right. Like,
So-
let's get it in under the wire, right? Yeah, yeah. No, and I mean, I really, you know, this is now like 4 years, right? Almost of
Yeah.
you like working on this, like in, you know, like envisioning it and what. And I have to say right off the bat, Neil, like I am so impressed with, like, this must be such a labor of love for you. Like, you are doing everything. You and Brent are like doing absolutely everything. So you are the main character. You play Brian. You also play another character we'll get to in a bit. You know, you wrote the screenplay, you did all the creature design, all the practical effects and the digital effects and editing and cinematography and producing and directing. Like, this is not a small undertaking, right? Like, you don't have ILM's team doing all of this. Is for you. And then we should discuss the man who is feverish and not here, the hubby, you know, too, because Brent is seems to be right in this with you. Right. I mean, you're, you know, so I know he also has a pretty important character role. And also cinematography and also production, right? So you guys, tell me how, I mean, we glossed it quickly, but like, okay, so the pandemic starts and you're like, let's just fucking do it because who knows what the hell's coming next. So because this was based on a couple of your short stories, right? You had the Sorrow Eater and the Key, right? And then the Blackstone, which you didn't write, I think, but
Correct.
but sort of inspired you, right? So okay, so you obviously write stories, but you when did you start writing stories, by the way? Were you like a little kid always writing, or is this something new? Okay.
I was a little kid, gosh, back in elementary school, I would write these just fucked up stories because I loved horror movies. Because you know, the 80s were freaking awesome for horror movies.
Oh yeah.
And, so I was obsessed with like VHS and horror movies and monsters, and so I would write these stories, and they would get passed around my, you know, elementary school and on the bus. And it just kind of, other kids started talking about it, and they, you know, they tear out a section where there was a drawing and keep it for themselves, and I would eventually get it back, and it was all mangled.
No. Wow, so you were like the talk of the school at this point. That's a good sign. That's going to encourage you, but okay.
Yeah, and so I just was like, and like I said, when the pandemic happened, we were still in Texas at the time, and we were getting ready to move to Vermont, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm going to be near forest again, because, you know, I grew up in Germany where it was just, you know, forest everywhere and so on. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, let's do this, you know, and I just went with it. But yeah, those stories, holy cow. I wish I still had those stories.
I was going to ask you, you don't have any of them anymore?
No, I had them a couple years ago in a folder in my old house. And of course, I left them in the garage in a box, and with the humidity and on, it unfortunately got damaged. And my dumbass just totally just tossed it, you know, didn't even think about it. I was just like, yeah, I know. I have a few drawings.
The origins, the seeds.
I know.
Well, but you know what though? You're making up for it because you're certainly creating a whole new universe here. So yeah, I mean that would have been pretty cool to have, but who knows? Maybe I don't know. Well, no, you'll never get them back. But I was gonna say maybe you'll find them someday. But no, you pretty much took care of that. But
Yeah.
okay, so you have been writing for I mean, you can't be a day over 21. So a couple years you've been writing. And you have always been fascinated by horror, right? So this is a dark folk horror fantasy series. And I'm gathering that at least some of this is somewhat autobiographical. Like, I think I get the sense there are little elements, obviously not like most of it, but I mean, like, you're, in terms of like, you're, growing up in Germany, Brian grew up in Germany, and it's funny when you say you were in Texas, I'm like, how would you have ever filmed this? Because the forest is another main character in this. Like, there's no, like, I don't know, is there forest there must be forest of a sort in Texas.
There is forest in
but no
East
snow.
Texas, like close to the border of Louisiana. It starts getting really nice. You have pines and it's really like gets nice and green. But the area where we grew up, lived, was pretty much mesquite trees and desert.
Okay, not really the landscape that you needed for this particular story.
No.
So I
mean, if I wanted tumbleweeds.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, very different vibe. I think, like you have the instead of the forest spirits, you'd have like the tumbleweed spirits. I don't know how cool that would sound. I'm really not too sure, but so you've done all of the filming was in Vermont, right? Danville, like everything. Okay,
on our property. Right. On our property, which is almost 40 acres of forest land.
It's beautiful.
We got fucking lucky on this house. I mean, it was amazing that we got this. And it was right at the, was it the middle of the pandemic? But right in the middle of the pandemic, it was,
so like a couple years in, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. Like it's really, and that's, I was going to ask you, like, how did you get some of these shots? But I mean, so I don't want to start too much, but I have to ask now because I'm geeking out a little bit. So is the house your house?
Yes.
A beautiful, wow. Nice house, dude. That's
I know, right?
beautiful. Yeah, really beautiful. Okay, so you just got to hang out at home and in your personal forest and do all of this filming. That makes life a lot easier. But okay, so we are talking about a story that is steeped in German folklore and mythology and fairy tales, and I love that you have managed to combine that with like 80s level creature feature, like retro old school, like making stuff by hand. You are like, you're not fucking around, Neil. Like you're really, so when did the creature design piece, like, was that something that you've always done? Have you always made models or okay. So talk to me about that. When did that just go hand in hand with your like obsession with horror movies or?
I grew up with like 50s horror movies. My mom actually started me on horror movies. We would watch horror movies together on Saturday. And when they used to have, I can't remember the channel, was it USA or TBS? I can't remember.
Okay. I know both of those.
I know. I don't even, are they still around? I think they're still around, but
I have no idea.
They used to show like afternoon horror movies. Like,
yep.
And we would watch them all the time. So I loved Ray Harryhausen. He did amazing work. Clash of the Titans. It came from BBC and
one of my favorite movies, Clash of the Titans. It does not hold up in terms of effects. It really does not. But I remember watching Bluey flying around and going, oh, "It's a golden owl."
Golden owl.
So yeah, I totally get. Well, I think there are certain things that when you see them as a kid, you imprint on them really hard, and then like that's in your DNA. So okay, so that's where you started. You were from like little. You had a cool mom then who just sort of
my mom was pretty cool.
Okay, all right. So you were already steeped in that.
And those little red cheeses with the wax around them?
Yeah.
I would eat those, and then I'd take the wax and I'd start sculpting little monsters out of them.
Awesome. Okay, that's awesome. I
So
love that.
Yeah, I've always created stuff. Like I'd see a monster in a movie, and I want to recreate it. So me and my brother would build something, and like for example, Deep Star 6. I love that fucking monster, and so we made it out of cardboard boxes, and we would play together.
Oh, that's so
attack
cute.
each other and stuff. So
Oh my God.
yeah.
So you really have always been, this is like your whole life coming here. Like everything that you're doing right now. I love when, and I can see it in the series. Like I can see, because I'm watching, and for this show, I watch and listen to everything, right? So like I probably, short of people who've worked on this film with you, the series with you, I probably know more than most about what you've got here. And like, I can tell how much work it must be. And I can still see how just absolutely jazzed you are. Like, you building creatures and out filming and, getting your bloody makeup done and all this. And I just see you all lit up. And I love that. And that makes sense to me because this is what you used to do to play. You're playing now, but
Exactly.
It's a whole fuck ton work, but still you're playing.
It's great stress relief. I mean, sometimes it's super stressful, but I mean, I love creating the creatures. It's it's like comes to me and I just go with it.
No, that's tremendous. So I feel like we should let people see a little bit. Okay. I feel like because we're going to we're in for a ride because I asked Neil before we started, am I talking about this with you as if like we don't want to let any spoilers go, or are we just like talking the shit out of this thing? And he's like, do that, so we're going to be getting into it, but there is so much story and lore and background and exposition, and there's so many, and having watched all of it, I know what I know, and I know what Neil isn't telling us yet, and I know what I think I might know, but I'm not sure if I'm right. I'm like, yeah, so like there's so much here, but I feel like we will begin. We went back and forth. I'm like, what do we show everybody? And I think what we're going to do is we're going to show the trailer for season 1 now, because why not, right? People will start with season 1 because everyone's going to go watch this. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about what they're going to see with the trailer? I know it's kind of self-explanatory, but you know what goes in the trailer and what does not. You leave just enough crumbs for everybody where they're like, wait, what who? And then it's like, we are not yet rated. Like it's a whole, you know what you're doing. So, okay. So tell everybody a little bit about what they're going to see here before we show them.
So, I don't always give stuff away right away. So you will see imagery of just of my world. That and
well, it starts on you.
Yeah, it does. It's about Brian has these dreams that he has like every freaking night, and it just goes from there. It's premonition. It's flashbacks. It's
mystical things and unexplained things, and guys, I mean, Brian, you hear me? I'm calling you Brian. Neil has done. I'm going to do that more than once because like you're so intertwined for me at this point. But Neil has done a lot here to entice people without giving too much away. And so what I did when I was prepping was I started with the trailer. I kind of wanted to watch it as if I was coming in on it like as you were releasing it, so it's like, okay, well, the trailer is going to be first, and then I went through videos and whatever. But so, this is, it's just so much fun. Let's just show it. So we're going to roll, guys. This is the trailer for season 1 of The Sorrow.
A Phantom production.
The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep.
A Neil Görz film. ancient evil has been awoken. One man will come face to face with a world of forgotten magic, horror, and sorrow.
Det var länge sedan vi sågs.
The modern and the old worlds collide. The sorrow.
The dream. It's always the same, night after night.
This film is not yet rated. Coming soon.
I have to say, like, I this was the first thing that I watched, and I was like, Neil's doing the thing. He's doing it, you know, like he's really, because, you know, there's something about, first of all, I don't know if you ever saw it. There's a documentary called In a World. I think it's all about like voiceover actors, right? Because there's that guy that did like every voiceover for every like trailer of every like, you know, horror movie, like big, you know, kind of action movie, whatever, where he'd be like,
I know exactly who you're talking about.
in a world where, you know, and it's like, what, yeah. And so like I hear, and I'm assuming this is Keith Bob Ray who did the,
Yep.
okay, yeah. So we've got, so the narrator, you know, makes sense to have the narrator do the trailer, but like, you know, I really, you are very adept at conveying the atmosphere of this series. And I'm going to probably call it a film sometimes too, because it is, but it isn't, but it is a series. So I'm going to call you Brian and I'm going to call it a film, but whatever, we'll get there. But I mean, you know, it's very clear right away that, you know, you're, you know, I admire the technique involved in making a good trailer for anything, right? Because you have to tell a lot without saying much.
Exactly.
And you have to know what to show and what not to show. And you have to score it in a way, and you have to edit it in a way, and you have to structure it in a way where it's cohesive, but it's still like unclear in the sense of being tantalizing, because you don't want to, and like, so you really, you've done that, you know, like you've given us enough where it's like, okay, all right. So you know, there's this dude and he's having a dream and wait, what the, wait, what, you know, and I love that because, you know, you have certain thematic elements that are crucial to the story. Ravens being one of them,
Yep.
the forest being another, just nature in general, dreams and, you know, just spirits and all of this stuff. And I dig that you managed to get that across so quickly and so clearly. Like, because when I watched the trailer and then I started watching the show, sometimes you see a trailer and you're like, oh, you know, and then you start watching the movie or show and you're like, This is it. It's like when you're playing mobile games and they're like, "Oh, here's an ad for a game." Like that game looks really fun. You download it. It's like this is not the same game at all.
Exactly.
Like, this is where's that one? Like So I knew what I was going to be. Well, I thought I knew what I was going to be watching, and then I actually was. So thank you for that because you didn't like bait and switch everybody with the, with the trailer. I hate when people do that. I really do
I hate that shit too. Yeah.
right? Because you're like, well, why? Like, what did you make that for? What show or movie were you trying to promote if not your own? So like,
Exactly.
was that? I mean. First of all, I'm sorry, I'm going to be all over the place because there's just so much to talk about here. But like my ADHD brain is like, how many hours of footage do you have for this series? I cannot even imagine. Do you know? Like, do you know how much?
A number? Holy cow, no. But oh my god, I've got to have at least hundreds of hours.
I was going to say it's got to be hundreds of hours. It has to. Yeah. It has to. I mean, because
I have a lot.
You do, and I really like, and so I kind of go through, and I experience this on multiple levels. There's like just as a viewer with the story and what you've done and watching that and being engrossed in that and the plot and trying to figure out, well, wait, what's, and then there's also like from the, the aerial view of like, Jesus, this must be, to edit down. So I'm thinking, okay, you have a fuck ton of footage, right? And then I'm like, okay, well that makes the editing job really hard, which is not just you. That's do we call MM? Is that what we're calling your co-editor? Is there another name? I'm like, I've never really called anyone MM before, but like that's the...
I know. I was asking her, I was like, okay, what does the other M stand for? But it's Marla Monique Laurie. And
beautiful. Okay,
yeah,
so I'll probably do MM, but that's okay. And like, really, like you two, like that's the dream team on getting this to actually have a story and a flow and a structure, and like, I cannot imagine how much work it is to edit this because you have so much footage and you have so much going on.
It is crazy. The editing part is the hardest part, and it's. Okay. It can be extremely frustrating. Like for the first episode of season 2 was almost entirely accidentally deleted while we were editing. I
saw that. You had to reshoot some stuff, right? Like
I got lucky. Luckily, I do back up my shit.
Smart. And oh my god, you would have never stopped crying.
Oh my god, I literally thought I was having a heart attack. I went so white, I collapsed on the ground, like
I can't even imagine.
Sweating, but luckily everything worked out, and I was able to get everything. Like I lost music that these artists made, specifically for the show, and I had to contact them again, and luckily they were all very nice.
Okay, that's
and
good.
They, resent everything, so I was able to do everything. So, but yeah, that was a bad night.
I would think so. Yeah, holy shit. I mean, like I've had things like that where like I wrote like a term paper and then thought it was gone. Like you have like a whole because the first episode of season 2 is like an hour and 16 minutes. Like that's a movie. Like your first episode is a movie. Like if you think you lost, I would have absolutely shat myself. Like I would have just absolutely been like, oh my God. So I'm so glad you got it. But all right, I want to back out a little bit here before we get into the nitty gritty. Because like I'm talking about it to you as somebody who's seen the whole thing and I want to get all whatever, but I want to make sure we haven't lost people in terms of what we're doing. So you guys have seen the trailer. Okay. You know a little, but not a lot. So let's sort of frame this up for people here. So Brian, I'm going to talk for a bit and I'll let you say things, but as a fan, I have to begin by sort of laying out how I see the story. And like, is that okay?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, good. Because I'm going to do it anyway. But so there are all these different elements here, right? So you've got the most grounded bit of the story, which is really, Brian's relationship with Richard, right? So we're set up at the beginning here, like Brian, has a really busy job. He's a nurse at this, Irwin Fulton Mental Institute, which is not an easy job. So obviously crazy hours, really intense. He's been in this relationship with Richard for 5 years, which is a long time to be with somebody and then not be married yet. But Richard is a doctor, also very busy. We get the sense that there's been some about schedules, but the two of them love each other. They adore each other. They do anything for each other. So we're set up with this real love, this deep love at the beginning. And so I'm like, okay, great, good for Brian, good for Richard, And so Brian is heading to work, gets a call that begins to change everything, although a lot has already changed and he doesn't know it yet, right? So we get this call from his coworker that the notorious David Hoffman, severe schizophrenic, child murderer, lovely, delightful individual, has been transferred to Irwin Fulton, to Brian's hospital. And so everybody's freaking out and he might have to stay. And this is a problem, right? Because Richard is leaving the next morning for Toronto to go work in a hospital for a month. So this was an important night. There are things in the way. They're not going to get to see each other. So we're already kind of like, oh no, I hope, I'm sitting there going like, I hope they don't break up like this, whatever, like they're so cute. Whatever. But I mean, so we've got that kind of grounding element there. It's, two people in love, two people really busy with work, trying to make it work, work is intense and all this other stuff. So that's about as normal as it gets, right? Like, yeah, that's pretty much, we leave normal behind really early in this situation. But we know that Brian, as you said, is having the same exact dream every night. Okay. And he does not know what the fuck it means, but it's really tormenting him. So talk a little bit about the imagery here, because you really do tease everybody with these dreams and the voiceovers and all the other stuff. So where did this come from? And tell everybody a little bit about just, the dream that Brian has every night.
So Brian keeps dreaming of it's not really explained right away, of himself, walking through the woods possibly, and he comes across this artifact, and it does something to him. It makes some weird connection, and he doesn't understand what the fuck's going on. He just has this continuing dream where he's in the woods, naked. But I don't really, YouTube, so,
Right. You'll show us that footage later, Neil, right? That's the private footage. That's if you donate enough money to the project, maybe you get access to the behind the scenes footage of Neil, but there we go. So, all right. 2 footage, 3 footage, who knows? We're not gonna we could speculate, but we won't say. So so he's very confused, but he's tormented. This is not a happy dream. This is a very unsettling. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And he just has this weird vibe, and he tries not to think about it while he's at work and when he's with Richard, but it's there, and it seems like when David comes in the picture, it just escalates a little bit more, a little bit more pieces of the puzzle start, combining.
Well, and again, so we don't begin there with David. I mean, with Brian rather, we begin with this chase through the forest, right? Okay, very ominously. And, someone is running, we don't know who because it's from their point of view, running through, and then all of a sudden you see this claw, and then you see a whole lot of blood. And then, so we're like, okay, something is going on. And I mean, one of the things that I really enjoyed that you did was that you wove what I did not realize was actually a true story initially. I did not realize that Rungholt was and I'm gonna butcher the German pronunciations, and I apologize, but I didn't because we've got you have such a, as I said, lore that you're exploring in this series. And that necessitates a lot of exposition at the beginning, right? You kind of have to set the scene for people. So, I'm watching and I'm learning this story about this settlement, very rich, prosperous trading city in, I'll try it, Nordfriesland, something like that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now it's northern Germany. So this is a real place. Okay, and in mid-January of 1362, I think I have that, there was this giant storm called, again, I'm going to butcher this, Grota Mandrenka?
Yeah, I think that's right. I was like, that's a tongue twister right there. Danish, I think. Danish. Yeah.
But I mean, it means the great drowning of men, which clearly not a good thing if you're a man, right? So, there's this sea that, I mean, this settlement that is very well-to-do and successful and thriving. And then it is essentially just turned into like the Atlantis of the area. And so this is a real place, guys. And I was kind of geeking out because there's this sort of this thing that when it's calm at night and you're sailing through, that you can hear the church bells underwater, which I'm like, okay, that's fucking awesome, right? So I thought you had invented all of this, but then I was on your Facebook page and you're like, oh, by the way, here, learn about where this is set. And I was like, holy shit, this is a real thing that happened. So like, was this something you grew up hearing about? Was this something like where did you get Rungholt from? Like, how did you talk?
I grew up in that area. So I grew up in that area. And at the time, I didn't know about it. I remember my parents and friends of ours had come from the States, to visit us, and we all went out there. And unfortunately, at the time, I was so obsessed with my Game Boy that I didn't care about Rungholt.
Yeah, not really paying too much attention. Okay, so you were there, but you didn't get how cool you were going to think it was later on. Okay.
I remember looking out, out to the water where they said the sandbars were still left, out there, and I was like, cool. Then back to my Game Boy.
Yeah. Okay. So then, when did the switch flip? Like, when did you go, hey, you know what? Like, this could be like, because I didn't have access to your short stories. So I mean, was there anything about Rungholt in either the Key or the Sorrow Eater, or
the Sorrow Eater? It was in the Sorrow Eater, and it was. It's the Key and the Sorrow Eater are related but different.
I had the sense,
and so the Key was about a man who hears this calling back to that Rungholt, and he doesn't understand why. He goes to explore, and then shit hits the fan, and so I started. I can't remember what it was, but it was a song I heard on one of the radio stations on YouTube Music.
Okay,
and I was like, oh my god, Rungholt. Holy shit, Yeah,
because actually, like a bunch of people have made songs about it and like movies and so it's like a thing. But that's very okay. So that kind of there. I remember I was there playing Game Boy. Okay, on my Game Boy, and I were there hanging out, not paying attention. Okay, so that's what kind of woke that memory back up. Okay, okay. So I mean, so all right. So we've got this it's legend, but it's true, but it's so intense that it doesn't feel like it could be real, but it really is, right? So we're learning about this, and I mean, 25,000-ish people died in this. This was not a small drowning of men. It was a great drowning of men, right? So we begin to hear about this story where, and correct me if I've got any of it wrong, but there's this ancient being that had cursed the settlement, right? Had cursed the area. And this blacksmith named Theodore Schwartz defeats him. Okay, just like fucks him up, defeats him, and gets this thing that is key in your series. So tell everybody a little bit about the seal, because this becomes it's a big fucking deal, guys. If when you watch this, you're going to need to know this. This is key information here, okay? So tell everybody a little bit.
Okay. So the seal, it is an ancient horn. I don't want to give too much away for that part, but I will tell you. So it does come back in season 2, but it is an ancient magical seal that was a crown, but also it was a staff at one point, and it somehow it wound up being attracted to this albino boy, which is one of the characters, named Cora, and it connects with him, and it gives him powers where he can tell the future, he can heal people.
But he can't see his own future, which is very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. So we've got this so, obviously this was not something that was true. This is Neil's brain. But so we've got this, mystical item here. Okay.
Mhm.
And we find that, this storm kills everybody but Theodore. Okay.
Mhm.
Everybody's gone. His family's gone. Everybody's gone, just wiped out. And the seal washes up. He gets it, which probably not a lot of competition, being that everyone else was dead. So, okay, if anybody was going to find it, it was probably going to be Theo. But so he is, in possession of this. And then we hear that there is this being that feeds on blood, which, okay, not great, human blood, but also the emotions of man, right? So this is not somebody you want to run across in a dark alley or, in the middle of the North Sea. But so there are all these sort of mystical elements here. And we've, got somebody who's defeated this ancient being, but then, this great storm happens and he's in possession of this. So tell everybody what happens to Theodore, at least at the beginning, what you're letting us know, because I know there's a lot baked into that.
So, Theodore is telling people the story about, he defeated this monster and, it cursed the village. But then, of course, you find out later on that it was a little bit exaggerated and that he was kind of covering up, other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so Theodore, he doesn't, last very long after that. I mean, he has a horrible life, a little bit. He makes a living, but eventually is killed, and someone else takes that artifact, and that's kind of how this the first episode begins. It's tells you the story, and then here we go.
And so we know at this point we have a lot of information, but we don't know how this ties into Brian's story, because Brian's just driving around, hanging out in the Jeep, going to work, hanging out with Richard, getting snacks, whatever. We're pretty good. And then there's all this shit, the drowning of men, and it's this crown and all this stuff. So we know these things, but we don't know what they have to do with each other. So you plop us in the middle of Golden Hollow, and then we learn a little bit more here. There's this thing. Now, it's Blue Hill AIT. Is that 8? Is that Et?
Yeah,
is that?
It's a small island within a river.
Yeah.
And
how do you say that? AIT. How do you say that? What does that mean? 8. Okay, that's what I was saying too. But okay, I wonder what it means. I probably should have looked that up. But so that this is where we are. So there's Raw Pine River. We've got we've got our setting here, and we hear about this. It's not entirely idyllic, this area. It has a pretty gnarly history. Okay, so take us back to 1798. Tell us a little bit about that. Because again, guys, I know this sounds like a lot of spoilers, but this is all in the first half hour. So you're going to see it. So we're not giving too much away. But go ahead, tell everybody what was found, because this is kind of...
So a group of hunters are out, doing their thing, and drinking maybe a little bit and whatever. And they come across this ritual and this is what I took from the Black Stone by
Robert Howard. Yeah.
And so I took that portion because I love that story.
Yeah.
And so I go from there, and
so he comes upon this ritual.
Exactly. He sees that they're eating babies and killing a child or something, and they go back.
Eating children or something, I don't know, or Chipotle, one or the other. Yeah, it was something like that. Okay, yeah. So the hunters are understandably freaked the fuck out because you see baby eaters. This is not a good place to be. So they fucking hightail it, right? They get out of there.
They do. Okay. And they go back into town and they try to, explain it, to, tell it to the authorities. But, a lot of people think they were just drinking up there and so on. And what's actually cool about that area, that I use, the shrine area with the stones that they're talking about is actually on our property, which is like a pet cemetery.
Ooh, okay. Wow. Yeah. You have a pet cemetery on your property. You have a lot of stuff on your property.
Yeah, it's like a mini Stonehenge into the forest out there. It's really bizarre, and I loved it. I thought it was totally cool. I was like, look at this
Of course you
shit.
did. Of course you did. This is right up your alley. Most people would be like, sure, but you're like, yes, please. Let me find the thing with all the woods and the pet cemetery. That sounds exactly like a place that I need to live and make a movie about. But okay, so I mean, so basically nobody buys it. Nobody believes them. So for 300 years, whatever, everybody's like, yeah, that's just a local myth. It's whatever, we don't buy. So again, we've got all these bits and pieces that we're being given. And then we come to, Brian is headed to work. He's just gotten this information that David Hoffman has been transferred to his facility, and he's probably going to have to deal with him. So this is where I feel like shit starts to collide with the grounded piece of things, the day-to-day of this couple with all this other stuff that we're hearing about. Because, Brian's trying to figure out, how am I supposed to treat somebody who's killed a kid? Like, he killed a 4-year-old kid. Yeah. I mean, I think most people probably would. Not somebody anybody's going to really want to hang out with. But he's like, he's a patient. I have to just treat him like anybody else. I got to go in there. And he walks in there. Things don't go so well. Because what happens? While
I'm giving him his medication, he grabs me, and there's a sudden connection. And I have flashes of, like, everything. Well, you'll see in the episode, but
yeah.
And it's extremely unsettling for him. It's like some weird psychic connection all of a sudden with this creepy guy.
Yeah.
And it's just too much for him that he runs out, puking somewhere.
Yeah. No, and I mean, this is where we really start to go, uh-oh, because, and again, we want to talk about it, but not make it so that people don't need to watch it. But like the things that are in this shared vision between Brian and David are not entirely unfamiliar to either Brian or the audience at this point. So we're starting to see, okay, first of all, if you're going to have like a psychic connection with anybody, you don't really want it to be the severe schizophrenic who killed a kid, but here we are, right? So Brian's already aware that he's got to be a little bit in deep shit here, because like, this is not a great person to be connected to. And also, like, can you imagine you're just like serving somebody dinner and they grab your arm and you see like their grandma and like a floating head or whatever? This is not what happens in the series, guys, but like, I mean, that would freak anybody out, right? But so it's not a normal thing. It's not a normal thing with a person who is really not a great person to be connected to. And Brian is freaked out because he's like, well, wait a minute, because what he sees, and again, we're not giving that away, that really makes him concerned. And
especially when he sees the artifact. And
oh, well, I wasn't going to say it, but yeah. No, that's okay. No, but again, like, so there's a lot in there, and then there's a lot in there that is new to us too. So this is really the bulk of episode 1. Okay, we know that David Hoffman is a critical character. We don't know too much about him, but he I mean, captivated the town is the wrong word to use, but like, he's infamous because, this is not a place where things like this happen.
Exactly.
Kinda, except it kinda is. But so, it's so we know that this, this is somebody who's very mentally ill, and somebody who's very dangerous and who has killed a child. And so, he's a little bit of a hot potato in the sense that nobody wants this guy, but instead of sending him to jail, his wife just died had just died. And this is like a whole other element here. And so, the judge says, all right, we'll send him to the mental hospital instead of to prison. And this is how, Brian kind of comes into contact with him. But we leave the episode on a pretty intense note. Okay. And I don't want to give it away, but we see shit's getting really, really quickly at this point. Okay. So Neil has set us up beautifully to delve into everything that comes in episode 2. All right. So I want to just pick apart a little bit here. I want to kind of come in and out of the episodes because, again, I want to go through it, but I don't want to like give it all away. So I'm wondering for this, how long did it take you guys to film season 1?
Season 1? Oh, gosh. So the cool thing was when we moved here, I was off for a year because that was the rule. I would be the house husband, get the house ready, decorated, and so on. And I would go back to work because I've never not worked. And so I had that whole time, to film, come up with ideas, contact artists and so on and get it the ball rolling. And yeah, so gosh, I just have so much footage.
Yeah, I mean, it's so. I mean, I'm assuming it was at least a year of filming,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
It was, Brent could tell you, oh my God, he dragged me out and made, But yeah, we filmed so much, and just on our property alone, and then on other places close to, Danville, Vermont, where we are.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was very, was inspired nonstop. It was
Yeah.
weird. It was like all of a sudden, all this inspiration hit. I'm out in the forest again. I'm listening to good music that's inspiring me, and
And that's a good place to kind of bring in why Neil is on this show in the first place, because those of you who aren't familiar might be going, well, Vox and Guest is usually a music interview show, and like Neil is not a musician, or at least not that I know of. So the reason that Neil is tied into, and the sorrow is tied into this indie music community, is because, as I alluded to, you are making a lot of work for a lot of members of the community and a lot of people who aren't really tied into the community specifically, at least not yet, because all of the music in the sorrow comes from the indie music community, which is pretty, well, not all, but most, right?
Most of it, yeah.
You really, when did that occur to you? Was it, pretty far in? Because I have to think that the chicken and egg of the music that's in the series, or at least the artists that you work with in the series, and the story and the music is probably hard to parse because they fit so beautifully together. Like what we're seeing and what we're hearing, and how what we're hearing influences how we're feeling about what we're seeing. Like that's a really symbiotic relationship. So where in this did you go, and I'm going to use a ton of stuff from the indie music community to be my soundtrack here? Where did that come from?
So I was really naive about the whole, copyrights and all that stuff. I was like, I could just use this guy's music,
No, no, you can't. No, you really can't. Okay. Not without a lot of problems, but yeah.
Exactly. So I was listening again when we had moved here to a lot of YouTube music, playlists. And one of them was, I've always loved dark ambient music, because to me, it's like adult, easy listening music, but instrumental. And so I would be, in the process of creating the creature or whatever, and I would have the radio playing constantly, and then song after song came, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta have this artist on the show. Oh my God, I gotta have this one on the show. How do I go about doing this?
Yeah.
So with some of the first artists, it was Mount Shrine, Tenaide, and of course Atrium Carcery, and a lot of them were on the Cryo Chamber label, which it's known for its awesome, dark ambient music. It's led by Simon Heath, who owns the company, and he's a very nice guy. So when I had finally made a list of the songs that I wanted, I contacted him because I knew I had to go through the proper channels.
We had learned that, yes.
Yes, we did.
We're not just going to steal it anymore. We want to actually ask people if we can use it. So good for you, Neil. Well done.
And so I contacted him, and I told him what I was doing, the project, and he was very nice. He was, he said, because you're an independent artist, I can make you a deal. You select these songs, and I'll give you this price for that. So I was like, okay. So I went with that. That was the beginning. And then I found other artists, some of them just by chance, because I had started getting back into Bandcamp. So they would direct me from one similar artist to another, and then all of a sudden I just had all these artists that on my playlist on Bandcamp, and I really liked them. Some of them I reached out to and I heard nothing back. Some of them are, heard stuff back, luckily. And even some of the bigger artists, like I tried to reach out to, who I won't name, who kind of dismissed me, but it's all good. And
well, you don't want to feature people like that anyway, so it all works out.
No, it was a little disappointing on two artists, and then I tried another artist who was getting big at the time, and I loved this one song of theirs, and so I contacted them. They were totally awesome. They were totally awesome. They were like, oh yeah, you can totally use our song, but we don't have the rights to them, which is so sad
Oh,
because you hear that all the time when
yeah,
an
yeah,
artist, they sign a record deal, but they lose what they created. And
yeah.
I
They
was
give
like,
their life away. Yeah, yeah.
so I contacted the record company because I really wanted this song, and it was actually going to be for the trailer, and also in the show. And so I contacted the record company, and oh my God, fuck that shit. That was
Oh,
an ordeal. They were like, well, you can use 5 minutes of the song, but only for a month, and you would have to pay us like $500, $600. And I was like, so I can only use it
yeah. What are you gonna have
once.
to do? Go back and edit it out after a month? What
Exactly,
the fuck? That's
exactly. I
not
was
how
like,
it
what the
works.
fuck?
Yeah,
And
that's
then
not.
and then I tried to weasel out of it because I was like, fuck you guys. No, I'm
Yeah,
not doing this. So I
yeah.
came up with an excuse, and and they were like, well, that's really sad, Neil, that you can't even put down $500. And I'm like, why should I put down money for a song that I can only use for like a
For a
minute?
month? No, that
Yeah,
makes
a month.
no. I mean, it's you probably would have paid twice that if you could have used it in perpetuity. But like that, literally, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like
Exactly.
what? Because it would have cost you so much money to go back and recut that, and then what are you going to use
Exactly.
instead? Like what? Okay, everybody who wants to hear this one song, you got to watch it this month because then it's gone.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, okay. So no, and I mean you really you have dozens of artists that you're working with. And I mean, some big names, some names that are very familiar to the viewers of this show. Isaac Avenin is all over the Sorrow, and Exoplanet, which is Mark's,
Yep.
a side project, and then we've got Balsamon. I never know if I'm saying it correctly. Sarg, is it Sarg?
I know. I was wondering that too today because I was
Okay,
going
it's
through the
not
list
just
and
you.
stuff.
Yeah,
But yeah.
and then we've got Josh. So Without the Sky and Ends and Under the Yggdrasil, you've got Reign of the Hated. So these are bands that I've talked to, will be talking to, and so I'm like, oh, I knew that was how I found you. I think it was through Mark from Isaac Avenin. And I remember interviewing Josh. And Josh said, well, I can't really say anything yet, but I think my music
remember
might
that.
be featured in this web series. And I remember going, I bet it's the Sorrow, but I didn't want to say anything because I was like, I don't want to blow it for anybody. So then I was really happy to see that all came together. So, I mean, but you have and it's a really cool mix of musicians. You have some big names in there too. You have some. So I'm gonna let you love on the those in particular because you have three I think that are really on the bigger side. But so tell everybody a little bit more about the music that you chose and your
Well,
association.
the music I wanted was to, when I hear the song, I immediately visualize what's happening. And so that was an awesome experience, And so the first big one I approached was Mortis. I love Mortis. I mean, since the early 90s, I've been a Mortis fanatic. I love that little evil goblin dude. He was the ex-bassist of Emperor, huge black metal band, and he did around that time he did his own dungeon synth. I mean, he basically was one of the godfathers of dungeon synth. And so I just reached out to him. I remember I typed up everything and then I deleted it because I was like, no, I can't. I can't send it to him. And then finally I remember it was so dramatic. I typed up everything again and I went like this and I pushed send.
Oh man, wow, that would be like in a montage from a movie from the 90s or whatever. Okay, so but it was a good thing you sent it, obviously.
Yeah, he was extremely nice. I mean, he was extremely nice. And I just kind of went with that. I said, oh my God, I love you, dude. And I really want to use one of your pieces from one of my favorite albums. And so he said, yeah, I mean, and
That's so
then
cool. It's great when the people that you admire don't turn out to be massive douche canoes. Like, I love that, that he was like, yeah, sure, why not? That's fantastic.
I even remember a line in the the message that I sent him, I was like, please don't tell me to fuck off. It would break my heart.
Aw, yeah, because then it's not only that I don't get to use your song, but now I don't get to love your music anymore either. Yeah, you don't want that. So thankfully, Mortis came along and was a solid person and not
totally.
not a dick. Yeah. So, but
And
then
then
you
after
also
that-
yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, and then after that, I reached out to another one of my favorite bands that I grew up with. I mean, gosh, they've been around since like 86, 85. Ataraxia, they're an Italian band. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't really categorize them. I mean, they
Nope.
do, every album is a different journey. And it's, I love I wish they would release their 80s like demos. Because
Yeah. Okay.
it's awesome post-punk music. I mean, Francesca Nicoli has this awesome voice. It's so unique. It's very androgynous.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember the first time I heard it, I thought, sorry, Francesca, no offense, but I thought it was a man singing. Because I thought it was maybe, he's had that voice. It was just so unique.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with them immediately. My French friend got me hooked on them. He gave me their first official demo tape, which was Profetia, which came out in 1990. And I got a tape copy of it from him, and I was blown away. It's an amazing album. It's so short though, and you just want more.
Well, it's not a bad thing to leave an album feeling, but yeah.
Exactly.
No, but I mean
like,
that's a powerhouse trio there, and that's a big band. So how did you end up actually getting them to work with you?
So I've been in contact with the keyboardist. He also does the male vocals for the band. Mm-hmm. And he also writes songs too. And I had been in contact with him for a couple years. He's a very nice guy, Giovanni. Yeah. And I was just like, hey, I have this. Would you guys be interested in doing a song?
So you got a resounding yes. Which was that's a pretty big coup.
Yes, I jumped up so high in the air. I was so excited when they said yes. And I love the piece. I mean, it's the theme song for the first episode of season 2, and I was just blown away. Yeah. And they let me use their music, for season 1. Mm-hmm. So it was an honor. It was a total honor to have all these artists.
I mean, and that, is it Mintha? Is that how you pronounce it? Mintha?
Mm-hmm.
Mintha? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because you change up some stuff from season 1 to season 2, your production logo is different, the production values are different. There's like a lot that I could see, like the theme is new. And, so one of the things that you'll find on the Sorrows YouTube is that there are 2 videos. The first one, I guess more for season 1. I used to love the weekends.
I love that song. Jeez.
Yeah. So this is Anton Dromberg and Daniel Rosenquist. Yeah. Yep. And so this is a great, it's very a very cool bass synth, lots and lots of layers, lots of dynamic, then brighter synth, lots of long chords, very ambient, very atmospheric, and a very good fit. And I mean, you absolutely can tell that, and that's why I asked sort of the chicken and egg question, because it seemed like you were, everything fit too well to just have come after, you tacked on the music as an afterthought. It's almost, the music in the Sorrow is almost another character, right? Because there's so much baked into it. And I love that you have some exclusive stuff from these artists where these are just for the show. They're just songs that they made for or at least just let you use, if not made for. But so when we get to season 2, we've been through a lot already at this point. We've been through a lot with Brian. We've been through a lot with these other characters that we're going to start talking about in a little bit. And so what's interesting to me is that season 2, clearly we're not done with our story, but there's some stuff that's been kind of wrapped up, or at least looks like it has been. I have the feeling that things will be coming back that I haven't gotten to see yet because there's only been one episode. But and then there are things that are very much loose ends, and then there are these little Easter eggs that you've dropped where I'm like, okay, shit this is gonna be something. Like, now what you've done to me is, Neil, every time I watch one of your episodes, I'm like, is that mushroom significant? Is this golden caterpillar significant? Like, I don't even know. I'm like, this could just be like ambiance that he's setting, and and like a little bit of a mood. I'm like, or is this gonna turn into something that's gonna fucking kill everybody? Like, and I don't know, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, that plant looks a little bit suspicious. That berry, does that berry have a face? Let me rewind that. Like, I'm really, like, you've made me borderline paranoid about looking for plot points for season 2. But but the music really does so much to heighten and intensify and deepen the mood of everything. And, we have some really heart-wrenching moments in this series, and the music could blow that. When somebody's sitting there crying over something really terrible that's happened, and again, I'm not giving it away, if you have the wrong song in there, you're going to completely break the mood. It's not going to work, Yeah. So, so it's so cool because you have some stuff like Isaac Aven and stuff that's very clearly metal. Then you have other stuff that is more ambient. And then you have some sort of almost not folky, but like folk ambient, you could almost call it, where there's just like different moods, different textures, different whatever. And I so appreciate that. I understand initially it was a little bit of a copyright thing, but I have the feeling that now, even if you had tons of money to throw at copyright, you would still do it the way you're doing it, where you're pulling these. Yeah. So let's just sort of rattle off. So you've got the shirt on for one of the bands, right? I think I saw a post Luctum. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Black Nail Cabaret. You've got, Mount Shrine, and that was a big loss there. Hilliard. Justo Pelota. You have like Peltola. Sorry, like you have all these musicians that like. How do you choose what's going where? Was some of it like, oh, I had this on when I was constructing this monster or this prop or this whatever? Was it like, how did you decide who to work with besides just sort of having been exposed to them, on the playlists while you were working? And then how did you decide what to put where? Because it is a massive responsibility to score a film or a show well. It really is, because it's either going to make it better or it's going to completely let it down. So how do you go about all of that? Like, once you say, okay, this is somebody I want to have, this is the song I'm going to use, how do you put that all together?
So the music has to connect with me. If I hear a band and they may connect with other people, but if they don't connect with me, I can't move forward. Mm-hmm. And so I just, again, it's like I hear the song, and then all of a sudden I visualize everything. It's weird. It just comes all at once.
That's amazing.
So I know which camera angles to go. I know how to shoot it to make the music fit almost identical to the mood of that scene.
Okay, that explains a lot. Okay. Okay.
And like when at the end of season 1 with that little girl, walking in the woods, and that piece by Mount Shrine. Oh my God, I love that piece. It fits so perfectly.
Yeah.
It's serene, but then at the same time, it has this creepy, dark
undertone. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So every piece that I select from every artist, it has to match the mood that I envision in my head. And so it did. I asked, Black Nail Cabaret, I love them. When I heard that song the first time, I was like, oh my God, I want that for the end titles. Just that one section, I want that, because it's what I visualize with credits rolling and that song playing in the background. And then other times, like I mentioned with the girl, with Mount Shrine.
Yeah.
And then Isaac Aven at the very end of episode 1 with the big reveal.
Oh yeah.
And
it's a big moment. That was a prize spot to get, and I'm sure that Chris and Mark and Curtis were like pretty chuffed to see where you put them. But I mean, it's I love that you're somebody who's making a show about visions and dreams, and you kind of seem to create that way. You get almost like a flash, like David grabbing your arm, where you listen and you see. I mean, that's remarkable that you have almost like all of the cinematography and the direction and everything kind of just occurring to you in your head when you hear something like that. I mean, like music must then be something that is very important to you. I mean, I know that's like a stupid way to say it, but like, I mean that more deeply in the sense of like, you clearly resonate with music in a way that is more, inspiring, for lack of a better word, than maybe for other people. So like, has that always been the case for you? Were you a little kid just always into music?
Music was my life as a little kid. My mom, again, I got exposed to ABBA.
Okay.
and Blondie.
It's a little bit of a different vibe, but okay.
I know, right?
It could be a hell of a lot worse. It could be Cotton Eye Joe. So, we're still good. But okay, so you had an early music education and a pretty cool
Pretty
one.
much.
Okay.
I got exposed to everything: Blondie, Susie and the Banshees, The Cure, and Babysitters. They were playing their awesome 80s music in the 80s, of course. And it was. I always loved music. I got really into film music, for certain movies. I was just obsessed with John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith, Tangerine Dream, and oh my God.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said Tangerine Dream because Greg and I were listening to Mintha, and Greg says to me, it's like the Legend soundtrack by Tangerine Dream and the soundtrack for Diablo, the game. And I was like, oh my God, you're 100% right. So it's like, gotta give Greg props on identity. But that's, it's like cool that you mentioned Tangerine Dream. So, yeah. And again, like very, that there's a lot baked into that too. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of, atmosphere. Okay.
What I wanted to do was bring like all the feelings of childhood from my childhood into the story.
That's awesome.
And the music had to be part of it, and it worked. It was amazing. It just seemed to flow perfectly, and I'm just so grateful to all the artists that they let us use their music, because it's beautiful and they're great artists, and I as long as I'm living, I will support them.
Yeah, no, but it really, I mean, guys, it's interesting to me how it really feels like it almost, it's a stupid thing to say, I guess, but in the sense of how well matched and how important the music is in this series, it almost feels like when you see like an orchestra, in a recording studio watching, a movie or a show on a screen, and they're actually recording it while they that's how beautifully you've blended what you're doing visually and story-wise too, because there's a lot to that. There's a reason John Williams always had themes, when it's Leia's on the screen and you always hear that you don't realize how much that affects you in the story, that if that music weren't there, or if that music were different, and so it's Neil is not a musician in this. I mean, do you play anything? Do you sing anything? Do you?
I used to be in a band.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, I used to be in a band. We did some metal, and I also did like some goth dark wave stuff in the in the late 90s.
Okay.
And so I guess I can tell everybody, but so my music project was Vitrage, and
which becomes important.
Yeah. In episode 1, I mean, in the first season, there is lots of my music out there, and the part where I don't want to. Who cares? I'll give it away. But the evil being that we eventually get to see, Zaldarum.
Yeah.
When he, I guess spoiler again, when he comes into Brian's home, that music that's playing is my music.
Your music. Okay, so look at this. I'm over here saying that Neil is not a musician, and I'm completely wrong. I mean more in the sense of like you're not on this show for your music, but like that makes a ton of sense to me too, especially the genres that you played in, because you've got a lot of all of that, and it really that's very cool that, because I kept seeing, because that's the email address too, right? So I'm like, this is something, and it's you the character and all this. So wait a minute. So then Well, I might have to ask you about Varian later then, because that's the credit. So okay, I'm gonna have to get that answer at some point. But okay, so sort of sidestepping a little bit from the music back into the show, and again, it's lovely that we can't really separate them, so it's not like we're leaving that discussion behind. But you have a lot of intense shit to score, like you really do. So I mean, these characters, whether they're human or not, because we should mention that Brent plays, again, a major character in David, so did you say, so honey, I was thinking that you could be the schizophrenic child murderer, or was that like something that Brent signed up for? Like what? Because it's like I love that you did that, because his eyes, and I'm not trying to steal your man, but like his eyes are so beautiful. So when you have those close-ups, and it's like there's something, because this is a character who has a vile story, but there's a sadness to him and a humanity to him. And I think a lot of that has to do with Brent. You don't have somebody who's like, blah, like he looks like a lovely person. He just happens to have, murdered a kid, which is not so great. Yeah. But I mean, he does have a sad story, and we come later to find out a lot more about the nuance of why what happened. It doesn't excuse it by any means, but It's not so simple as the news thinks that it is.
Exactly.
So, I mean, was that Brent's choice for character? Did you say, like, who do you want to be? Or were you like, it has to be you? You have to be the schizophrenic child? Like, what was that discussion like over dinner or whatever? Because that's an interesting casting choice, I will say.
So I approached him one night. I was like, I said, I really need this one character, and I think you fit it perfectly. And so what's funny about the whole child murder thing, not that that's funny, but
I was like, that's a sentence that you don't hear often, but yeah, okay. Within the context of fiction, folks, this is what we're saying, yes.
It's almost like an inside joke. So Brent will tell people that he does not like kids. But, it is so not true. Kids fucking love him. They come to him. He, plays with them and stuff like that.
It's like people who don't like cats. Cats are attracted. Yeah, it's magnetized. Okay.
So I was like, okay, look, you're going to play this character. I hope you're game, but we're going to do it. And he at first was not game, because he, with work and everything, he was, wanting to enjoy his downtime. But, yeah, he did it, and he did a great. I told him how I wanted him to be. Yeah. I wanted, and like you mentioned with his eyes, he has those perfect human sad eyes.
Yeah.
And it fit perfectly, and so I put him in that role, and he delivered really well.
Yeah, he really did, because he's not on screen that much, but you remember him. You really do, because there's something about. There's a sadness in the eyes. There's a kindness in the eyes. There's a warmth to his face, and in those moments where he's almost got that vacant laugh, and, you see somebody who's kind of been absented from themselves. He's been through too much, and he's still going through it, and again, I mean, it's, it was so smart to me that as we get into the story more, and we do start to find out more about David, more about Daniel, the little boy, more about where that all came to be, more about some of the flashes of things that we've seen in other places that we don't necessarily know what they are at the beginning. And then later on it goes, oh, that's where that from the trailer is from, or that's where that vision that Brian had at the beginning, is from. And there were all these little elements, but like it was really smart to me that you had somebody who didn't just look straight up evil, and it's part of the complexity that I think you've built into the story, where even the big baddies, when you look into the history of the characters, and some of that is revealed, and some of that is you got to go on the Sorrows Facebook page and read the character descriptions, because we don't know some of this stuff yet. We don't know so much about, Neville's parents. We don't know, like all these things that are key pieces of information, but you're not doing a black and white, good guy, bad guy, evil, good, sort of simplistic story. Everybody's got trauma in this thing. Like, even if it's back to like the 1300s, everybody's got trauma. And I appreciate that.
That's why I chose the title, The Sorrow, because everything's connected.
Yeah.
With all these people, everything's connected with sorrow. But there's also the bright side eventually, for some of these characters, and
I haven't seen too much of that. Yeah, I was like, it's not in season 1, that's for sure. And so far, it's not in episode 1 of season 2 either, dude. So I don't know. I'm gonna call a little bit of bullshit on that one for you. But yeah, no. But it's we'll get there. I mean, I got to think maybe Blatt is a little bit of comic relief when he shows up. But like, okay, so you we've gotten through this first episode, which is again largely exposition, but crucial. Because we will not understand anything that comes after it without it, right? So then by the time we move into season 2, we're getting, not season 2, episode 2 rather, we're getting a lot of information very quickly. I feel like episode 2, you really are putting all the chess pieces in place at once. There's a lot that happens in that episode. And we're introduced to, directly, indirectly, whatever, some of the characters that are going to become so crucial as we go. But there's a lot baked in here. But so we learn a little bit more about what's been going on in Blue Hill, which ain't great, okay? Because, at the beginning, it's kind of like, oh, it's this idyllic little area, except, there are these cannibals, and that's not great. But, it's probably a myth, it's probably not whatever. But then we come to find that a lot of people in Blue Hill have just been disappearing. They never find them. They don't know what happened to them. Well, they found one, but like, there's they're not really finding most of these people. And so we get some of these stories here. Okay. We get, is it Blair's story? We get Carl's story, and we're sort of seeing that what looked like an idyllic little town, there's some funky shit going on, right? So I don't know if you want to get into sort of the major thing.
Yeah, I'll get into it.
Okay. I wasn't entirely sure, what you wanted to do there, but so talk to us a little bit about episode 2, because you are, as I said, sort of setting things up at this point. So let's sort of give a gloss on that without, again, everybody has to watch, so you can't give too much away, but we can at least move the story forward a little bit so we can talk about some of the other shit that I really want to get to.
So we get to learn of we get to meet the antagonist, the first one, kind of, and learn a little bit more about David and why he did what he did. And so basically we get introduced to Zaldarom, who's an ancient elemental being that is also manipulating a spirit of a ancient albino shaman within his body, and he gets his power from that ancient relic. And
you don't let on exactly what the relationship, physical and otherwise, between, I don't want to imply anything weird there, but people, when you watch, you'll know what I'm talking about, between Zaldaron and Korra, or the white-haired boy. Like, you don't, we see things and we think we know what's going on, but there's a little bit of directorial misdirection there, which I appreciated later, because it's like, again, when you see something and you think you understand it, and then later on Neil goes, except kapow, this is what it actually is. I'm like, it's cool, like, it's fun to be able to go, oh, it was, but and I did a lot of that, kind of like, oh, I get it now. And there were things where I was like, wait, now I got to go back and make sure, because I thought I saw. But they were walking through, but hold on, and so there was a lot of, like, Greg heard a lot of me kind of going, wait a minute, while I'm watching. But like, so, we're learning about these stories of these disappearances, and we get 2 particularly. And the thing that I thought was, it was smart, because you drop enough information about, so the mayor's daughter, Blair, 19, heroin addict, like sort of a troubled history for such a young person. They find her screaming, behind a church after being gone for 2 days, and she's not in great shape. She's got basically no blood left. There are these really deep puncture wounds in her body. She's practically catatonic, but she keeps screaming about, shall I say it?
Yeah, totally.
Screaming about this tree monster. And people are like, okay, Janice, like Blair's not doing so okay today. So like nobody, and again, we're getting a theme here. We've got the hunters who are like, oh my God, there are these guys in these rocks that are eating babies. And people are like, okay, you've been drinking. And Blair is screaming about this tree monster. And they're like, okay, but you're an addict. And so we don't believe you. And so, it's one of these things where, it's like when you watch a standard horror movie and, somebody will be like, don't go up there, man. And then the guy's like, I'm going to go investigate that sound. And the audience is like, no, don't go up the stair. You get this sense that and Carl too, there are all these warnings posted around. Like maybe we want people to stay away from the forest right now because there seems to be some janky shit going on. And Carl's like, nah, I'm just going to go be drunk and whatever. And again, we're learning that things are not fantastic in Blue Hill. There's a lot that's portentous and dark and creepy that's going on. Mm-hmm. And so as we know this, we get to Brian has finished his very long shift. He comes home to quite a nice surprise. Mm-hmm. Okay, which again I'm hedging a little bit because I'm not sure what you do and don't want me to reveal. But
you can tell the reveal.
So, he's missed Richard. Richard had to leave. He figured since Brian's not going to be home, he's got this, month-long gig in Toronto he's going to be going to. So he leaves. But Brian comes home to a card and a ring and a proposal, which is lovely. And I'm like, oh, yay for Brian and Richard. They overcame this scheduling thing. And it's a cool backstory, too, that they knew each other a while ago, but then, they kind of lost touch and then they reconnect at this party. So, again, when you go through the Facebook page, you get a lot more backstory, which makes I was about to say movie, makes the show, you get more layers there. Mm-hmm. And so, Brian's all thrilled, absolutely, whatever, tries to call Richard, gets voicemail. Okay, Richard's probably, driving or working or whatever. So we are at this point, a bomb hits, right? Are we talking about the bomb? Shall we talk about the bomb?
Yeah, totally talk about the bomb.
So Brian gets, I know I asked you, but I wanted to just make sure. Brian gets a really bad phone call. Okay. And I remember seeing the scene in the trailer of you crying, and I'm like, something's not, whatever. So I'll let you talk about as much of this piece of it as you want to.
Yeah, Brian gets a phone call that he wasn't expecting from Detective Grady, played by Sky Schober, who did an awesome job with Detective Grady. When I first heard that line that I sent him, can you record this? I want, and he sent it back. I was like, oh my God, that's perfect,
Yeah.
And so he gets this bad phone call that, we found, Richard's Richard's vehicle, and it's abandoned, and it looks like there's, some evidence of something leading into the forest, of, footprints or something. And but there's no trace of Richard. So, so Brian has to deal with that. And, it's funny because I didn't want it to be cliche, and I kept asking people, if your wife was gone for 5 days, you would fucking freak out, right?
Right.
Because I didn't want it to be super cliche or, too over dramatic.
No, and you really didn't. You did, because that had to have been a difficult scene. Set of scenes, but especially the one where you're sitting on, I don't know if it's the bathroom floor or your bedroom, but you're sitting on the floor and you're crying, and it's it's very easy to go from pathos into bathos, where it's like, oh my God, this is oh my God, and you didn't get there at all. It was very, it was almost quiet in its way, but a palpable grief. And so I'm sitting there going, okay, well, this is not good, because we love Richard. We've barely seen Richard. We've seen one scene of Richard in his car. So we don't get to see a lot of Richard. And I should mention Paul Gordon there, who, memorable in the little bit that we see him there. But you know, now he's gone, you know, and what I like too is that Brian is clearly a realist, and whether that's partly, you know, from all of the shit that he just has throughout from the very beginning that we're introduced to him in episode 1, he clearly understands that there's a level of foreboding around him, you know, and so pretty quickly Brian kind of sits there and goes, you know, if I were going to hear, if he could reach me, he would have reached me. And this is not, you know, this is, you know, and Detective Grady even says, you know, you might want to brace yourself that this isn't going to end well. And it's like, well, of course, you know, like you can, you know, but you really took that, you know, and it's such a sad piece, because you've got this guy who, you know, looks like he was at a place where, okay, his job is good. He's in this relationship. He's now engaged, and, you know, things are going well. But there's all this stuff that's happening to him, and he doesn't understand it, and he knows it's not great. And, you know, he's tormented by it. And so to have that grounding ripped out from under Brian kind of blows the whole thing open, because he's like, all right, I need to know what the fuck is going on. All right. And this is where shit really starts to get real, because we start to get more information about David, which I'm not telling everybody. You're going to have to watch it. Yeah. But we get a lot of information at the end of episode 2. We really do. Would you agree?
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So we then are put in episode 3. Did I say 2? I meant to say 2 if I didn't. So we get a lot of information at the end of episode 2. We move into episode 3, and episode 3 does not start in the present time. Okay, we're back now talking about this great storm and whatever, and we're even before that, okay? Now we really start to dig in on some of the supernatural, mystical, big baddie kind of characters here. So I don't want you to give too much away about this, but how did you come to develop the character? Like, you have, your characters are very, there's so much, like there's so, I mean, there's a lot on the screen, but then there's a lot that you have that you're giving that backstory on Facebook too. So I mean, like, you know, we've got Brian, we've got Richard, we've got David, kind of, you know, Detective Grady are humans, right? Mm-hmm. But then pretty much everybody else is otherworldly, right? So where did the ideas for like Zaldarum and Cora and Nebel and Tiana and Variant, like where did these characters come from? Like, were these just visions that you had? Like, what came first, kind of the idea, or did you get glimpses, or were you just listening to something and you were like, now I know what I'm writing today? Like, what? So because the characters are, you know, there are a lot of them, but you know, you've developed them all quite well. So where did that all come from?
So my grandparents were really awesome. They, you know, they would take us into the woods and tell us stories about, you know, fairies and elves and trolls and so on. So we would, you know, we would fly back to Germany from the States to visit them and so on. And that's where a lot of these influences came from, is my grandparents, you know.
Okay. And it's the dedication, I guess. It's dedicated to Oman Opa at the beginning. Which I was like, oh, I love that. That's so cute. Okay, so that was, and again, I'm assuming from pretty young then, these were things that you were hearing about. Yeah, and
Nabel is a combination of different characters. You know, the white mask that she wears, it's kind of like a weird elfin kabuki mask.
Yeah, and it's almost like a kabuki orc. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I love the whole green hair, kind of punky, you know, try to give it that little 80s vibe.
Yeah. I didn't think about that, but I like,
you know, every episode I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't cheesy. I wanted it to be classy, you know, not like, it's not big budget, obviously, but it's, you know.
Of course not. But some of the best, like those 80s creature feature things, you know, you might sit there and go like, okay, you know, but like, the story is the thing, you know, like that's where you, and some of it is meant to be like, you know, you could have done stuff with AI, you know what I mean? Like you made a very conscious choice of what the aesthetic was going to be, you know? And I think given how much nature it factors in as a character to this, I think it all makes a ton of sense. But yeah, I don't want you to give too much away, but you can talk about Nebel a little bit.
So like Zaldarum, for instance, like when I created him, every part of him is from our forest. The mushrooms on his neck, the teeth, the, you know, I wanted something that looked insect-like but not, and then plant-like.
Just going to go back to teeth. You didn't find actual teeth in guys. Like, don't freak out.
No.
There weren't. I know there's a pet cemetery, but there weren't actual teeth in Neil and Brent's backyard or whatever. But yes, the elements that created the teeth. Well, I didn't want people to be like, what the fuck is going on their property? But yeah. So that was all sourced from where you live.
Natural elements like wood,
cool.
trees, and the plants and so on. So which was really cool because every single piece is from the forest, and it's all natural.
How long did he take to make?
Oh my God, he took forever. He was the most complex thing I have ever worked with.
Yeah.
I will say that I hated him.
You were just so over it by the time. Yeah, I can picture
I was
that.
totally over it. I was totally over it, especially with the final episode of season 1. I was just like, oh my God, shit's not working. I can't get this to work. Why it looks terrible on camera. How am I going to make this work when it's supposed to be this big climactic, scene at the end of
Yeah.
And so he took quite a bit to work with. We tried doing what's the word? When you have electronic and wiring in him, and like the
animatronic. Yeah.
And that did not work out. And so we, I love Jim Henson. I've since the Muppet Show, since I was a kid. The Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I kind of took that route. With, making it come to life and trying to make it look believable. Mm-hmm. And I think I did okay on him. I think I did good on him.
Well, and what I love too is like I ascribe to kind of the Jaws approach to certain monsters, creatures, whatever, like the famous story that, the shark in Jaws was supposed to be like this thing that, and they couldn't get it to work, right? So there's all this hinting at and glimpses of and like little bits and pieces, and it ends up being so much better than if it were like what. And I feel like that was kind of the level that you took it to for the big, and again we're dancing around a little bit, but like for that big scene where Zaldarum has to be like the most visible or present or involved, we'll say, and I think that it's I'm so impressed with the amount of work that has gone into. And I know I said that, but it's worth repeating. Like, I mean, guys, really, when you watch this, you have to keep in mind, Neil has written it. He's making all these creatures, which is no small feat because there are a lot of them. You know what I mean? Like, okay, fine. Like you got Crypt 9 to make you a couple masks or whatever, but like mostly it was you, like you're, and then, filming all of it and editing all of it and scoring all of it and promoting all of it and, acting in it. And we're like, it's just so much, and you had to love what you were doing because there has to be, everybody I've ever talked to who makes films or shows or whatever, or like anything like this, they hit a point somewhere. And it's usually right around the last third of like either the film or the first season or the whatever, where they're like, I don't even know if I could do this. Like, it's too much. I'm going crazy or whatever. But they push. Did you have that? Because like they push because it's like, I've got to do. So like, what was that moment for you? Was it like a creature thing? Was it like you said, like you were getting frustrated because it's like, this isn't what I have in mind. That's got to be hard for you. Like musicians, Ambrose from Anger Overdose, there's the mention, famously said on this show that like one of the hardest things about being a musician is getting what he has in his head out into the world. And I imagine, that was the
problem. I was like, I have this fucking story in my head. How can I continue to tell the story and do it justice without it looking like a horrible, cheap mess? And so I just was like, okay, let's just go out there and do it. And luckily, everything fell into place.
Yeah.
I had great support from digital artists who, contributed to the show. And I started delving in, especially in season 2, I started delving more into miniatures and so on.
Yes,
And
very smart. Yeah.
and and I think it turned out really fucking cool. I was really impressed with some of those miniatures. At first, I was like, "How am I gonna fucking do this?" Like, spoiler episode, in 1 of season 2, there's a part with the Jeep, being lifted from.
I was going to ask you about that because that's a really cool effect. Okay, that's a miniature. Guys, you got to watch this because literally, I think Greg and I, Greg watched season 2 with me, the episode 1, and we were both like, how, but his Jeep. How so now that makes it because it didn't look like that though. It really didn't. Like that Jeep was really realistic looking. I'm impressed. No, okay. You really it's so and more than anything else, I'm so happy that you're so happy with everything. Because that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, like when you have a story, and especially turning a story into something visual. Like there's a lot to that, because we can envision whatever we can envision, but then when you have to make that shit and make it look like you want it to and make it work and all the moving parts and everything, like that's intense. As a story, you could sit there and be like, okay, and there's an eye that forms in the sky. When then you're like, oh fuck, now I gotta make that, like how am I gonna do? So I mean was that mostly the thing that when it was hard for, was trying to translate your vision? Okay.
I was trying to figure out how can I do everything without having to rely or hire someone to make digital effects, because I really didn't want to go digital all the time. I wanted some digital effects, but I wanted those digital effects to be like the ones that they could have used in the late 70s and 80s.
Right, because so you have a whole kind of ethos that you're going for here, where you want the retro, you want the handmade,
exactly.
You want the,
And I had a lot of influence from, back in the day, they used to show those Star Wars behind the scenes stuff on HBO or one of Cinemax or something, and I would watch all those, and then I would get big books on on miniatures and how they did certain movies like Blade Runner and Earthquake and other movies and so on. And I was just fascinated with models, and so even as a kid, I would build these models and of course destroy them. But so trying to bring that back to the screen was intense. Yeah. And sometimes I was like, I threw up my hands, like the Jeep thing. We were gonna go. Sunny, who plays Tiana, she helped also with some of the digital images and so on. And she was gonna design something, with some weird AI animation.
Okay.
And it started off really cool and it was promising, but then she couldn't get it right. In her words, she just could, she tried.
AI is a fickle mistress because you'll put something in there, but then like something has a hand like growing out of its own hand, or like the 9 fingers, when you just never know.
So
I can see that.
On that. So I got frustrated, and we finally just said, okay, this is how we do it.
Yeah. No, but that I gotta think, every time you encounter something like that, then when you come up against something like it for another episode, you can go, okay, you know what? Let's do what we did, for the Ice of Nebel. Like let's make that a miniature instead of trying to build something that's like, 8 feet tall or whatever. We're gonna try actually. No, but that's part, because have you made movies or shows or anything before this, or was this like your first foray into anything like this?
This was my first attempt. I was hoping with even though I was never in a studio or I worked in anything before, but I was trying to go with what I did as a kid, creating monsters and characters, and trying to bring it to a point where it could be done and it worked without, looking fake or unbelievable, that it wasn't really alive, that it's just this, thing. And so I used all that, and I went with that.
No, that's so really, it's even more impressive that you bit all of this off, because it's like, I get the sense, it's funny, like I tell the story sometimes that, when we decided to do this show, I said to Greg, what would be cool is like if we had a little show where we just interviewed people in the community or whatever. And I was like, anyway, and then when you actually do it, it's like, oh my God, this is so much work, and I could see you being like, let's make the movie. And then being like, oh my God, like this is so much work, you know, and it really, this is the first time you've done this. But I love, Neil, that you're putting together all of these things that you've loved your entire life. Like, I love that you've got, you know, your 50s horror movies, your creature features, that you've got the music that you liked and the vibe that you liked, and then, you know, being a writer and bringing in your stories and your family, and like it's all, your fingerprints are all over this, literally and figuratively. And I love that. I love that it's so personal, you know, and I can tell, you know, that it is really personal. I can tell that you're so invested, you know, totally, and I love that. I do.
It totally is personal, and it gets so much more personal. You know, there's going to be, you know, drug addiction in there, and you know, Brian had to deal with that, and you know, which is a reflection of, you know, my past, unfortunately. But you know, you're young and stupid, and luckily you make it out of there. Mm-hmm. Some people don't, but you know, whatever. Yeah. But
well, I have to do the thing. Everybody who watches the show knows where I'm going now. I don't like stupid. Because as I've said a million times on this show, I do think that trauma is always the gateway drug for anything, right? So I'm sure you weren't just being like, oh, hey, you know, I think I'll go out and like deal with addiction now for my life. Like, nobody does that. Nobody signs up for that. Like, oh, you know, like that. It's never where it comes from. But I mean, you know, and then again, like, you know, that you know, like the bits about, you know, Germany and, you know, Brian, you know, moving, I don't want to, you know, but like when Brian is in Germany and all of this, you know, I see you pulling, I mean, I don't know you, but like I see the things where I could go like, I bet this is actually part of Neil's story. Like, I bet, you know, because I mean, I know about your, you know, I mean, I know your last name, first of all, obviously, but like, you know, it's that, okay, clearly, like, you know, all the German and all of the I mean, all of the otherworldly characters are speaking German. So, I mean, clearly this is not something that you're just like, oh, I think they'll all be Chinese, you know, like this is something that has like a lot, you know, and it's you know, because it has its roots in your roots, the show, you know, there's an authenticity to it that I think that would have been lacking if you tried to do it any differently, you know. So I love that you're going to be bringing in more elements of your story because, you know, you are not Brian and Brian is not you, but you inform Brian, you know, and right. I think that is going to keep everybody even more attached to the character because you actually care about him. You know, it's like, Jesus, this poor fucking guy, you know, and like, what else is he going to have to go through? And like, and that's important because if you don't care about your protagonist, nobody's going to watch your shit. Like nobody, you know, you got to want to root against the bad guys. You got to want to root for the main character. But again, I appreciate that you're not making it just so simplistic.
In fact, I asked Mark, you know, from Isaac Evans the other a couple weeks ago, I was like, did Brian seem stereotypical gay, or did he seem like a pussy, you know? And he was like, no, dude, I didn't get that at all, you know. And I also didn't want it to be focusing on the, you know, the gay thing. I just wanted it to be a normal dude, has a relationship like everybody else. And
yeah, but yeah. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was worried about that. I was worried about that people would be turned off by that. But
first of all, anybody that's turned off by that, that's their own shit. And I'm turned off by that. So, I mean, you know, bye, Felicia. But like, I what I actually love is that it's not something that I even thought about. Like,
and that's what he said.
Yeah, no, like you and Paul end up, you know, he's in bed and you're dreaming and you're whatever. And like, it's just a couple in bed. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, and it's kind of like, it's like what I love about Schitt's Creek.
I like the wine and not the label. Does that make sense?
Right. That, you know, it exists in a universe where it's as it should be, you know, and it's just this, you know, okay, we got two people who love each other and this is their story, you know? So no, I mean, I did not feel like there was any agenda in there. Not that I whatever, that's a whole other conversation, but like I did not know. I mean, I was very focused on just what is going on here. I wasn't like, and he's married to a guy? Gasp, you know, like what? So, you know, like, I mean, but I really, I also love that, you know, Brent wasn't Richard. That would have been so easy, right? You know, like, I mean, it would have been, it would have made a lot of sense. But I think that you inhabiting the character the way that you do, you know, I don't think anybody else could have played Neil. You know, Brian. Do you see what I mean? This is where it comes. I don't think anybody else could have played Brian, because I think that it's like this, where all this came from was from your childhood. It came from your grandparents. It came from, you know, the home country. It came from, you know, places that you were, you know, and places that you live, and people that are in your life. And like I didn't get any weird anything about anything. Like, I was just watching a show, you know, like I was just absolutely watching a show, and believed what you were doing and how you were feeling and all of that. And I think, you know, everybody really took on whoever they were playing, you know, and it's like, that's not easy either, because, you know, some of these characters, it's not like, you know, you could relate to a Brian, but how are you going to relate to, like, you know, like a Welton, you know, like that's not something you live in your everyday life. You know, you don't hang out with trolls that you're just going to be able to, like, oh, I'm going to model it on like Gary from accounting or whatever. It's like, I've never met a fucking troll, you know? And like, I have to tell you, Neil, when Welton first came on the screen, I had looked down for a minute and I looked up and his nose was in profile. And I was like, wait, what part of this? what are we looking at right now? I had to roll back a minute. I was like, oh, it's the nose. Like, I had that moment. I was just like, but you know, you can't take your eyes off the screen for a second. But like, I so appreciated that. Like, I get the sense that most of the people that are in the show are people that, you know, like they're, you know, I know some people came in from Texas to film things, but and you can tell that everybody cares. Like, they really care, which is so lovely.
I was just blown away. You know, Corinna playing Mabel, she's just had a blast with that. She's very shy, and she doesn't like showing her face.
That worked out.
It's so sad because she's such a beautiful girl, but you know, she's finishing up her law school, blah blah blah, and she's doing so great. And the other cast, I mean, they just, like, Sky totally went into his role with Detective Brady. I was so impressed. You know, on the first take, you know, you see it in episode 1 of season 2 when, you know, there's that revelation of what happened to his loved one, we'll just say.
Yeah.
And he was on it. He took that shit from the heart, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And Shauna and Dawn and Sunny, I mean, and Lane, they got into their characters. I mean, it was Lane impressed me too. Shauna blew me away, as did Dawn. Yeah. And Lauren, Marlisa, you'll meet some of those other characters in season 2. But they did. And you know, and it's, I mean, so we just to kind of keep in the thread, because I do want to make sure we show the trailer for season 2, because that's where people are going to be, you know, landing. So I mean, again, like, you know, episode 3, The Devouring, again, not a optimistic title for an episode, right? But like, I mean, this is where we are at the holy shit of like some things really, really start to pick up steam here, you know? And again, that's but like it, you know, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, you know, Brian is kind of trying to mentally move forward. He has to, just to keep sane, you know, and he's processing things and he's trying to look forward and all of this other stuff. And again, we've begun the episode with really key information about a couple of our otherworldly characters. So, you know, again, I'm always, as I'm watching, going, okay, how's Neil going to tie these things together? Like what? Because because the thing is, when somebody knows how to tell a story, you assume that there is meaning, like nothing is thrown away or just accidental. You know, it's got to be laid out in a certain way. And so I'm always going, okay, well, so I learned this part about this character here in season 1, episode 1, and now we're in 3 and I'm seeing this, and you know, and you start to put the connections together. Everything's connected.
And that's it. And you learn a lot about how these key otherworldly characters relate to each other, how they relate to things that were set up in the very first episode, how they relate to Brian. Like there's a lot that comes together in that episode 3, right? And so we ended on an unsettled note, because there's a lot that we know has got to be coming, and I'm sitting there going, okay, well, there are only 4 episodes in season 1, so I know big shit's about to happen, right? So we get to the end of season 1. Okay, we're in Maelstrom, and again, we can't talk too much about it, guys, because this is a climactic thing. Okay, we're not going to get. But this is where the rubber meets the road for Brian in a lot of ways. And what I was fascinated by was that where you think your story is wrapping up, you realize, okay, this was actually just the appetizer of evil. We got a whole other thing coming here. And so that surprised me, because you don't know in those first 3.5 episodes, 3 in the beginning of 4, who's as key as they are, who becomes more of a focus at different points. Like it's very, because I thought what we deal with in episode 4 was going to be like the thing of the whole show. Like I thought that was going to be something that that was going to be like the end of it, And so when I'm watching and I'm going, wait, this is happening now? Like we're doing this now. Where's he going to go? Because I know there's a season 2, and like this is and when we find out why it's not over, then you're like, oh shit, and I really appreciate, most of all your storytelling, that you,
thank you.
That you have, because I think what people really need to grasp is, as a viewer of a movie or a show, you see it and it all progresses as it needs to, so that hopefully, obviously, if somebody's making a good movie or a good show, it progresses as it needs to, so that at the end your questions are answered and satisfied, which is one of the reasons that everybody got so pissed off by the end of that show Lost, because it was like there was all this stuff, and then you're like, wait, we never fucking, where's the kid, and what was that? And
I know, what the fuck?
Yeah, it was like because it's easy to make things cool when you don't have to explain them later. It's like, why is there a polar bear on this tropical island? Well, we're never going to tell you. Too bad. Fuck you. So, if you're going to really do justice to everything and tie up all your loose ends, you have to know what's going to happen all the way through. You have to know your whole story, which is, again, I think why the prequels for Star Wars were such a problem, because I know he said he wrote everything in order, but I don't think he did. And so it's kind of like, now we got to retrofit this to this or whatever. So, what people really need to keep in mind is that when you are breaking these things up and you're filming these things and you're structuring these things, you know the whole story that you have to tell. And you've got to plan for that, right? So we get to the end of episode 4, the end of season 1, and we are left on a very unexpected note, I would say. Right. Okay. So I think this is, and I know, guys, we were giving more information at the beginning, but I'm not going to tell you what the end of season 1 is. You're going to have to go and watch it, because why would I tell you that? You have to go watch it. So we're being vague on purpose, but this is where we begin season 2. So I think we should now, we are going to show the trailer for season 2, because first of all, trailer 1 was not really the length of a song and whatever. And also it's our show, so we can do what we want. So tell everybody a little bit about the trailer for season 2.
So it's kind of a teaser. I didn't want to give too much away. I wanted it to be a build up. We just hear a little bit. And, so yeah, it's just a little taste of what's to come, and I wanted a little bit of the effects in there. Yeah. So I added, Nabel's, mountain, and perfect music by Rodzinski. I hope I pronounced that right. And yeah, so that's that. It's just a taste of what's to come.
It's just a taste of what's to come. Here's the taste. Okay, this is the trailer for season 2 of The Sorrow, The Ice of Nebel. So, all right, I have to say, so season 2, we have one episode. I know the second one is in the works and coming. You have kind of you've changed the tenor a little bit here. There's some cursey bits in here. There's some language. There's one moment, and I think it's out of Josh's mouth. I believe. You know what I'm talking about? There's a certain word. I'm sitting there and we're watching and I'm like, okay, we've started the episode off and like, we have this extended narration that Osana does. Again, critical information, guys. Like we come in hot on season 2. And there's a lot that gets uploaded to us, in the first, 5-10 minutes of the episode. And so, okay, like we said, we know kind of who's going to be our main protagonist. We know it from the title too, but of not protagonist, but antagonist of this season.
Right.
And we really get a lot of information right off the fucking bat. Like there's a lot that's going, okay. And this is where some of the nuance, and I'm not telling you guys much of any fucking thing about season 2. So don't look at me whatever sideways, but I can't, because if I tell you, it'll ruin it for you and you'll be mad at me later. So, but I mean, we learn a lot here. We learn a lot about the nuance and the history and kind of all these other pieces that we thought we had most of the story about, but now there's like other layers and there's other information and there's other things that tie them together, and there's just a lot. And so I got all this. I've learned all this information about, I don't even want to say it, but the siblings and the illnesses and all this other stuff. Okay. And then, we're learning about, some of these impressive miniaturized structures that you've got, the Spear of the Guardians, and I'm going to say it terribly, but Felterdon.
Hey, you said it right.
Oh, okay. But like, I mean, yay. But I mean, but then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, everybody got like, well, bring me the fucking, and I'm just like, oh my God. And then I'm watching and Greg's with me and I am as you may have figured out, shrinking violet. And all of a sudden I'm going, okay, we've got this band of people here. And again, guys, I'm going to be real vague because I'm doing that intentionally, but we've got, 2 groups of people who are set against each other in significant ways here in this first episode. And you get a lot of information about who, sort of the good guy side of things are. And then you have these 4 characters here in the not so good side. And I'm watching and I'm going, okay, so, and I'm probably not going to say it correctly. Is it Abarax?
Yes, you said it right.
Okay. That's Josh, right?
Yep.
So Josh, who when I interviewed Josh, was just very calm and sweet.
The last thing that I was doing was watercolor paintings. It's been kind of a while, but yeah, I did that for a couple of years.
And whatever. And all of a sudden, Josh's character turns around. The old witch drops the C word, and I'm like, what just happened? And I literally was like, and then I was like, I had to have heard that wrong. It was probably some German word for flower or whatever. I rolled it back and I was like, Joshua, So, I mean, you really like the aggression and the intensity and whatever is really like ramped up, everybody's, Varian comes in all like, give me the fucking what I'm gonna feel fucking, and like every so like the stakes are already higher, the tone is different, things are more urgent, things are more and again one of the beauties of being in a season 2 of something is that a lot of season 1 has to be establishing the story, right? So exactly. By design, episode 1 of season 1, I'm not going to say it's slower, but in terms of the amount of action and the things that move the story forward, there's less of that than there is with each subsequent episode. We start off, as I said, season 2 comes in hot. like comes in hot. So there's just so much that happens in here that we're going to be very vague about. But we start meeting some of those other characters that we've heard about. We start seeing some of them. A lot of things progress. And Brian is actually not in this episode all that much, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's I wanted to put the story out there first, and then flashback. He's having these dreams about these events happening, but he's just like, okay, what's happening again? Yeah. And I wanted the first episode of season 2. I wanted it to be my fucking Empire Strikes Back. I wanted it to have that impact. I wanted it to be like, holy cow, holy shit, everything hits the fan in that one.
No more training do you require. Already know you that which you need.
And that's what I was going for. I wanted it to be a fucking good episode. And it's funny you mentioned with the the cussing and stuff. There were actually a few complaints from some people, and some people just didn't like the cussing. And but I wanted them to be gritty. Abarax is a sleazy character. He's just a nasty, selfish little.
Pathetic! Your outdated sorcery cannot protect you from my powers. I will have thee kneeling before me in no time.
Yeah.
And Varian, he's very arrogant, entitled, and spoiled, and it fit perfectly. So that's what I wanted it. I wanted it to have that dark tone. This is serious shit,
It does. It definitely does, because I think you couldn't have had Zaldaran or Korra do that. I don't think it would have worked, because I don't want to get into it, but like considering what Zaldaran is, like having like the F word fly out of his mouth might seem a little bit like, where'd you learn that one? But like, so I mean, it really, I can tell that the pace of the storyline and how it moves is going to definitely, based on at least episode 1. Season 2, I think, things are coming fast and furious. Like I'm in my head, I'm remembering everything that happens in that one episode. Now, when I say episode, okay, because the episodes for season 1 are all about 35 minutes long. You've got a 75-minute episode. Now, I know it's the uncut one. Does that imply there's going to be a cut version of it, or are you leaving it as is, or what's the...
I'm leaving it as is. This is what I wanted. I released a temporary, I think it was like, oh gosh, I can't remember if it was 40 minutes or maybe, I can't remember, 30 something minutes.
Yeah, it was closer to the first season episode lengths, yeah.
And I just wasn't happy with it. And so I wanted to put the full thing out, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to delete that one, and I'm going to put out the full version.
Yeah.
And just, like a Game of Thrones episode, I think they were like an hour long.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's certainly not unprecedented. So
right,
yeah.
So I wanted to add that, and and I'm planning on doing that again for the second episode of season 2.
Okay.
That way I can get more in and have a good impact as well. I'm hoping
you're making movies and then calling it a series. I know what you're doing. Yeah. You're kind of cheating, buddy. You kind of are, but it's okay. I'll give it to you because it's but I mean, the story needs to be what it needs to be, right? And the episode, and I don't know where you really could have cut that. Exactly. It would have been like one 40-minute episode and then like a 25-minute episode, and I don't think that would have made a lot of sense. So I could see where you made the choice to do that. I was laughing about the fact that you're like, I'm deleting that one and I'm putting this one up, bitches, and that's it. Like, and you know what? And really, like, again, the story you want to tell, and it's your fucking show. You can do whatever the hell you want to.
Yeah, I love that. I don't have to answer to a studio. I don't have anyone telling me I can't do this and can't do that. YouTube has been awesome. They haven't. Yeah. I was really worried about the gore and the violence and the whole, kids being killed.
Yeah.
But they haven't pulled it yet. So I'm thinking I'm safe. So
yeah, it's been long enough that because I mean, like, it was end of April 22 that
Yep.
you really start. Yeah. So I think by now you would probably know. But I mean, no, and you know, it's funny to me. Well, not funny. That's not the right word. But it was interesting to me that episode 1 of season 1 started in the more, I mean, with the exception of the very, very beginning, but started more in the human world and then transitioned a little bit more into the otherworldly. And season 2, episode 1 is mostly steeped in the otherworldly, but then ends more in the human world, but in a really dramatic fashion. And again, we're not telling anybody what happens because I do have to say though that the climax of that scene, and I know you know what I'm talking about, has one of my favorite pieces of effects in it, that Sky was then gifted later on at the watch party. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So I really, because I saw the initial, I don't know how to say this and be vague, but like I saw that, you know, when it's in profile and then you see the little, and then I'm like, oh, but then I was like, oh, it went all the way. Like, and I'm sorry, guys, this is going to make no sense to anybody watching, which isn't really fair, but like you have to watch it. That's the point. But I mean, so we really are thrust into, I would say more happens in the first episode of season 2 than not in the sense of like nothing happens in the first 2 of season 1, but like, again, because we have to establish the story in season 1, the gear is totally different with season 2. So like you're going to leave that 75 minutes going, wow, a lot happened in there. Like a lot happened in there. We're meeting all kinds of people. We're really, and you know, and it's funny to me that like at the end of this first episode, you start to feel like these are characters that you knew already, but you didn't. Some of them are brand new. You know, right. the priestess is brand new. Like we don't see, like we hear little bits, you know, and Tiana, whatever. But I mean, so I really, I know that you are almost done. Well, now, but by the time this airs, it will probably be out. But where are we with episode 2 of season 2? Because I know you're close, right? You're almost.
I'm almost done. I'm just waiting on 3 things that are holding back the release. So I'm hoping to have it out by April.
Okay, so that's about when this should air. Great. Okay, or just after. Okay, that's pretty good. That works out pretty well.
I wanted to add a couple of special guest stars. Like
I saw there's a okay.
There's a possibility of some really cool guest stars that I'm hoping it works out. So I'm not going to say anything right now.
Sure.
But
nah, that's smart.
Cross those fingers, and hopefully I'll hear.
Cross everything but my legs, Neil. Got to keep my options open. But all right. So good. Okay. So yeah. So I mean, and is that about the pacing that you're going to want to do for this? Is about every 5 months, 6 months, something like that you release something?
Unfortunately, with me working and trying to have time with my family. And because I had that year off for season 1, and I could do whatever the fuck I wanted to, and wasn't worried about time and so on. But now it's being an adult.
Right, I know that whole real life thing, such a pain in the ass. No, but you know what though? I mean, because you are. I mean, I joke around about it, but you really are releasing short films as episodes at this point. Like that's really where you are. And I think that more than entitles you to spread them out. You're not making a 22-minute sitcom that you can just knock out, and you're making all the creatures and guys, I mean, if you thought season 1 was heavy in the creatures and the effects and all the way, episode 1 of season 2 is like, I cannot imagine how much work that episode was. Like I really can't, because you have location based things, like physical structures that we have, and whether in miniature or not, you still have to fucking make it and then film it so it looks believable. I mean, it's something that's supposed to be 77 feet that's really make this big. You got to make that look real. That's going to take time. You have the number of creatures in episode 1 and how much screen time they get. that's another thing that's going to take a lot of time. You know, you have all these people that you have to coordinate. Like, there's a lot. So I don't think anybody's going to be mad at you for needing to have a life or whatever, you know,
God
a
forbid, right?
job, things like that. Yeah. Okay. So we should kind of expect, and do you know how many episodes season 2 is going to be? Do you have that plotted out?
I'm trying to go for 4 or 5.
Okay.
Possibly 6. I don't know yet.
Okay.
But yeah, it may be just 4 because of the hour length for every episode, because I'm trying to get it all into one thing and just put it out there. And yeah, I mean, there is so much more coming. Oh my God.
Well, I think because really, I mean, like, given that there was a lot that happened in season 1, and then I really thought, like, I had the sense of, like, when episode 4 started, and I was like, well, but what's going to be left to, you know, like, I was like, and then when you set that up, I was like, oh my God. And now I'm just thinking of everything that I know from the character backstories that I've read, which I'm sure we're going to be seeing. So there's going to be, you know, young versions of characters and events that have happened to them that sort of set them on the paths that they're on. Like, that could be a whole couple of episodes just on its own with the sister. Like, you know, there's so much. I mean, you are kind of crafting something with the amount of lore that is more along the lines of like a game of, like, there's a lot. This wasn't not like a short story and then that was it and it was told. And I get the sense that you're probably coming up with new ideas as you go.
Exactly. I'm totally mixing in everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, this may be the first like 8,000 hour show that anyone has ever made. I don't even know. Like, I don't even know what a standard series length is, but like, it's, you know, and I think that really, as we start to wrap up, which seems so weird to me that we're even going to get to do that, because there's so much I'm probably going to have to talk to you about not on camera, because I want to be like, wait, and is this, but I mean, like, you know, that you tell the story that you want to tell, that you've got all these ideas and that you're getting new ideas, and that turning it from a movie into a series enables you to explore all of that, you know, and exactly. One of the great things is that you don't have to rush it. You don't have to try and wrap it. You could not make this a movie. Like, you couldn't do it. You have one episode that's the length of a standard movie. Like, you literally couldn't do it. And you have to do it this way.
It would be like trying to get a kick-ass book into a movie, which sometimes works and then sometimes doesn't because so much is left out. And God, I can't even imagine, you know.
And why do, you know, you don't have to do that. You can just make it. You know, you can, exactly. It's all you guys. You know, if you have the passion for it, then you do it. And I mean, clearly it's resonating, because I'm, you know, we've been perpetually trying to build this YouTube channel and it's such a fucking slog or whatever. And like, you know, when you pull up the Sorrow, you guys are like hovering right around 5,000 subscribers, which is tremendous, right? Especially for an indie project. And then all of these episodes, and I mean, you've got, you know, again, you've got the 2 music videos that we mentioned. You know, I used to love The Weekends and Mintha, and then you've got this ambient journey, Ice of Nebel, you know, this like 16-minute, 17-minute, you know, selection of songs that have different themes, and some of them are about characters we haven't seen yet. And so it's like you're really building this universe, you know, and everything is just like 19,000 views, 22,000 views, to like, what fucking witchcraft are you using the seal to get these numbers? Like, what? How did you? Because YouTube is notoriously a fucking insane nut to crack, and like, people really must be resonating with this because your numbers are ridiculous. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. Again, I just put the episode out there, and I was like, okay, here we go. And you know, at first it was like 10 views. And, you know, nothing. And then I just kept turning it off. I was like, okay, I'm not going to look.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days later, it was like maybe like 100 or so. And then it just kept going up. And I was like, oh my God, people like it. And that made me feel good, really good, because I was really so self-conscious about putting it out there and thinking that people were going to dog it. And, you know, this looks so fake, or blah, the music's terrible, or blah, blah, blah. But it actually turns out that people like it. I think our biggest fan base is the Asian countries.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, which was interesting. So, yeah. I mean,
No,
America.
it was fun to watch, because I started at the beginning of your Facebook page, and then I saw the posts of like, oh, it's finally here, it's out, and then you're like, oh wow, we have almost 100 views, and then it was like, wow, 300, and then like 2 days later it was like 1,000, and like it just snowballed, and I remember reading through that and just being so happy for you, because it's like, I know what that feels like. You work on something so hard, and like, we're at a point where if we get 300 views on something, we're like, oh my God, like what happened? It was like a miracle, so I mean, hitting is not the word I meant to say, to be hitting, not titting the numbers, to be hitting the numbers that you are, it's such validation for what you're doing, right? Like, I mean, to sit there and say like, and this is taking all, like, you're getting numbers that I'm sure that there are people who pay for, and like, I was like, he's not paying for this. I can like, this is just, but I did not realize it was like, you have Asia that's like behind you. That's like Asia's like, single-handedly keeping the sorrow. Thanks, like guys. Over. Yeah. I mean, geez, like, thank you, Asia, all of Asia. But like, I mean, it just, I'm so happy that you're doing something that you love so much, that you and Brent are doing it together to the degree that you are, that you have so much support from people. Because one of the things that, we talk about with people in the indie music community all the time is how hard it is to work so hard on something. And like, friends and family a lot of times are like, oh, cool, but they won't actually listen, or they won't actually go to a show, or they won't watch a thing or whatever, and I mean, you have, what I gather is lots of friends who are in the show, who are like literally in the show. You have friends who are helping you, I mean, is helping you edit. And I mean, like, you've got all these people so invested in this project and like really passionate about it with you. And it brings you joy. And like, more than anything else, even if nobody else watched it, like, I would love that for you, just because this really is you putting everything that you've grown up loving into one thing, and you've made this now. This is like, you have a legacy here. You have something that you're crafting that pulls in all of these elements. And, so I know I wanted to make sure to highlight how much work I can see you've put into this. Like, it really, I mean, really, like, it is admirable that you've clearly it's got to be coming up on thousands of hours that you've spent on this, if it's not there already. And like, that's not a small thing. No one piece of it is small, and you're doing all of it.
And it almost did, there was a time when Brent felt very neglected because I was so focused on the show that I would not pay attention to him or, be there in a relationship, really.
Yeah.
Because I was so obsessed and focused on the show, because I was having such a good time, that time flies, and you're like, oh shit, holy shit, I'm not being, a good husband. I'm not there for him. So after this season, I am taking a break.
You're going to take like a year, you said, right?
Yes, or more. I just, it's so much work. Yeah. I do love doing it, but it is so much fucking work, and it does get stressful.
Yeah.
And, that's why I decided I'm not going to put deadlines out there. I'll tell you, maybe it'll be out here.
Yeah.
Because most of the times when I've tried to put out deadlines, shit fucking happens.
Right. Your internet explodes on the mountain or whatever. No, and you know what? I mean, I think that's something that, that I hear a lot when I've talked to the musicians that come on this show, that work-life balance is so hard. It's so hard to, and I mean, almost all of us, there's work, and then there's the music or the film or the art or whatever, and then the personal life, so it's not even just like, oh, my job is my music, or my job is my filmmaking, and then my family is but you've got the 9-to-5 job, and then you've got the passion job, and then you've got the family, and it's just, I'm seeing it more and more with friends in the community, where like, some of them are having to pull back and say, you know what, I got to spend more time on my personal life right now. I got to kind of, rebalance things a little bit. And I think it's something that we all bump up against. Greg and I will have
Absolutely.
a random cancellation, and we'll have like an afternoon where we don't have anything to do. And we're both like, oh, this is really nice. It's like, and we don't want to not do the show, and we don't want to not have the band, but like, you don't have enough time to do all the things that you love. So I'm sure everybody respects that. And hey, look, it's not the worst thing in the world to like build suspense and demand for something because, it's been on hiatus for a year or whatever. Like you have to have your life too. You have your marriage, you have your home, you have your family, you have all this stuff you have to balance. People will wait. Then they can just rewatch everything else. That's all.
I know. I was really worried that I was going to lose some of those fans, but some of them have come back. I think because I did take a little time off, for season 2.
Yeah.
Maybe I did lose some fans, but I'm like still in the mode of, oh well.
Right. No, things find their audience, and the audience finds the things. And I mean, again, this really does function more like movies than a series. And like, I remember waiting, for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You had to wait. Yeah. You had to fucking wait.
What are we waiting for?
And like that you waited, and then you were all excited, and then it was time and it came out, and then you had to wait for the next one. Like, people can develop a little bit of fucking attention span where we've moved too far away from that. There you go. That's it. No, but really, so guys, just to kind of to pull all this together before we wrap up, you got a regular guy, kind of, this supernatural world, they collide, a lot of shit happens. We are in the middle of it here, just from the beginning of season 2. And this is again, huge passion project for Neil, for Brent. Like, this is a massive undertaking, and it's just all right there on YouTube, and you can just watch the shit out of it. And then you can DM Neil and be like, which is what I'm going to do after this. I'm going to ask him all the questions I want to ask him. But so, we know that there will be more. It will come out when it comes out, and that's just fine. And there's plenty for people to watch, and, you can go back and rewatch and catch things that you missed, because trust me, you will have missed things. You will not have realized the significance of things. You will not have put together the things that you needed to. And there are some things that I'm still like, did I get that, or is he misdirecting me? So yeah, there you got plenty to watch. So before I let you go, I have to do to you what I've done to every single guest that I've ever had on this show, and end the show with a little segment that we like to call In the Vox Seat.
Dun, dun, dun.
So I have asked every guest who's been on the show, every musician who's been on the show, the same 5 questions. I'm going to ask you the same 5 questions. We're going to have to change them up a little bit, but that's okay. So if you had to describe the sorrow in 5 words or less.
Oh my God.
Good luck, Neil. What would you say? Now, again, you don't have to use, some people make it a sentence, some people use phrases, most people use individual words, but I have the feeling the words will be easier for you than anything else, but let's see.
A roller coaster ride through dreams.
Ooh, look at you. That was pretty clutch. Nice job, my guy. All right. A roller coaster ride through dream. I love that. And it fits. It does fit. Okay. All right. So your favorite thing about being a filmmaker, series maker, whatever we would want to call it, but your favorite thing about making this series and doing what you do?
Just letting my imagination run wild and being able to do it, like making the creatures the way I envision them in my head. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. And now the flip side, your least favorite thing about it?
The time, the editing, the practical effects, when they aren't working. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, that's 3 things, but I will say the obstacles to getting your vision the way you want it. How about that?
Okay. So
Is that fair, or am I not like?
No, that's
so
totally good.
but so the time definitely. But I think that
Yeah.
kind of encompasses everything. The time, right? Both
Yeah.
how long it takes to do it, and then not having the time to do it, and then taking time away from Brent and family and things like. Is that mostly at the time? That's the main.
Yeah, the time, and I wish I had more time to devote to editing it, and
Yeah.
and then sometimes hitting a wall, where I'm trying to bring what is in my head out in the picture.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's. I mean, everybody who's creative in any way can resonate with that. Absolutely. So, all right, this is a little bit different from what I usually ask. I usually ask like a desert island disc question, but I'm going to have to ask, I think I'm going to do it this way. If you could only watch one movie or show, would you get to pick one? You want to do movie or show? For the rest of your life, what movie or show would it be? And why?
Oh God.
I know it's a horrible question. I usually ask the musicians if you could only listen to one album for the rest of your life, which you could answer if you wanted to, but I feel like the film or show thing is a little bit more apropos here, but up to you.
Okay. Gosh. Oh goodness.
It's a horrible question. I'm telling you, it's a horrible question. I don't even like myself when I ask it.
God, if it was a movie, God, there's a tie between so many. It would have to be Suspiria from 1977, Dario Argento's classic movie.
Wow.
Or The Dark Crystal. I love that movie.
You gotta pick one. You gotta pick one. I know.
Suspiria.
But Suspiria. Okay, tell me why.
I just love that movie. It's what it sounds morbid, but whenever I'm down, I watch that movie because it's very energizing. The colors, the set pieces, and just the cinematography. I love that so much. And if you watch it now, it's not a terribly scary movie for nowadays, but it's such an artsy movie, and it has just this cool that I just love. It never gets old, and the music, amazing, and just everything about it is just a masterpiece.
Okay. You went there. I love that it was that close between Suspiria and The Dark Crystal, which I also could understand. That all I could see where that would be a big one for you too, given like all of your childhood affinities. So, but all right, you made the difficult choice. I applaud that. But now, Neil, this is the most important question of the whole interview. This is the most meaningful, significant. It's really going to tell people who you are as a person, as a director, an editor. This is cinematography. It's all laid in here. I think you know what's coming, but your toilet paper. When you put the toilet paper on the holder, does it come from over the top, or do you pull it out from under the bottom, and why?
Over.
Okay, over. Tell me why.
I guess maybe it's an OCD thing, but I think it just looks better that way, and it's that's the way it should be. It's funny. We just had a party, and someone flipped it around, and I was like, "Oh hell no!" So I flipped it back.
Did you happen to invite a guy named Dean to that party?
Oh my gosh, I can't remember.
No. I'm asking you because our categories for this show are over, under, other, and Dean. Over is folks like yourself. Under is, the people who put it under. Other is anybody who doesn't do either of those things, like they just stick it on the back of the toilet tank, or they leave it on the floor, or they use bidets or wipes or whatever. And then we've got this one guy, Dean, from the Other Broken Ones, Anthony St. Peter's band, and Dean is chaotic neutral.
I'll switch the role.
To?
Whichever direction it's not.
So if it's over, he'll flip it under. If it's under, he'll flip it over. And he does this everywhere, at work, at restaurants, at parties. So that's why I'm wondering if Dean showed up at your house, just like the little shit goblin that he is, and turned the roll around and then just left. And he's not that far away. They're in Maine. They're not that far away. So he could have done it. But okay, so you had somebody who who defiled your ordinary toilet paper orientation and you had to put it back. I appreciate that. So you are a hardcore, pardon the expression, but you are hardcore over. I hear Brent laughing in the background. Yeah, I'm not asking the other question. Don't worry about it. But okay, so you join an illustrious crowd. It is by far the majority, by far. So we have an over. Neil, I really I hope this doesn't sound obnoxious to say, but no. I'm so proud of you for doing this, because I know how much work. I don't know, but I can imagine how much work it is. And I do know how hard it is to balance things that you're passionate about, like your husband and your movie, and then what became your show, and the music, and just all of it. And, you know, whatever form and whatever cadence it takes going forward. I'm just so happy that you are putting this thing that you are so passionate about into the world, you know, and that it's doing so well. It's doing so well. I mean, man, Asia, you know, we're gonna go to like Japan one day, and they're gonna be like the Sorrow T-shirts, and you know, people are gonna be dressed up like Welton or whatever, you know, who knows? I mean, there's probably like a Sorrow Con somewhere in Japan. We just don't know about it yet. But I'm so glad you came on this show, and I'm hoping that everybody has been engaged and intrigued enough to go and watch it, and if you do, message me, because I want to know if you guys thought the same things that I thought. But I'm gonna cheat and get the answer key from Neil once we finish rolling. So thank you again for being on, and you know, just the best of luck to you, really, Neil.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad to be on the show. It really means a lot to me too.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, that's it. That's another Voxing guest in the books. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.